So I have a very offensive question to ask as we
God,
transition. Okay, and it's an extremely offensive question to ask you, Zonia. Can you hear us, Zonia?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're transitioning, eh?
Yeah. Well, I have the most
I see
offensive
what you
question
did
I can
there.
possibly.
I see
Yeah,
what you
you
did
saw
there.
it. You saw it. I have a question, and I apologize in advance for this question, but I gotta know. Do you manspread, Zonia?
No, I do not. Never have. It was never a thing that I did.
Okay. All right. Maybe there's a good argument there, Eris, because maybe my argument that it's just the biddies is a false argument.
It's not. You don't need that much space, bro. Like, I understand. Like,
Okay.
keeping
First
it,
of
like,
all,
a few inches.
I'm 6'5" and almost 300 pounds. I need all the space.
No. Why do you get to have more space than someone else who also needs the space? Besides
Because I quite literally take up more space. Like I can't.
Okay.
And he has a medical condition.
Okay. Do you support
That's true too.
very
as well,
very overweight people on planes getting to take up as much space as they want without having to?
If they buy 2 seats.
Yeah, they should buy
No,
2 or
if
3
they don't-
seats.
If they don't buy 2, but manspreading, I don't have a problem with someone manspreading on 2 seats that they like have bought and paid for. Right? It's usually in some kind of public situation where you're supposed to just take up one.
For example, like when I'm on a plane, right? I have to get an aisle seat, and I literally have to manspread. It's not physically possible because of my height and like size that like I can actually fit in like.
I feel like I need some diagrams like
seat.
on like the.
You'd be fine in first class though.
Yeah, I'm fine I've been on first class before, and like I can fit perfectly fine. But like in like coach, like or economy or whatever, like one foot has to just go out into the aisle. Like I can't not manspread.
Do you think it messes with the like, center of gravity on the plane when you're on there?
Fuck you.
So I am a larger person as well, and what I end up doing is because I'm a larger person, I actually make sort of like what would you call it? Concessions to sort of limit how I'm imposing on others with my size.
Yeah.
So I try to make myself smaller.
Like I went to a play
kind of like pull myself in a little bit, etc.
I went to a play recently with my mom, and it wasn't a sold out play, right? So like only the middle section was purchased, and we got like front row tickets, but I didn't know what the tickets were, right? I went to go see Gaslight, like at a local play. It was fun. It was really well done. And so like it was like I went up to the I guess you call them maitre d' or whatever, and was like, hey, that section that's not reserved for anyone, is it? Off to the side. I was like, can I go sit in the front row over there instead of here? Because I'm 6'5", and if I sit here, like the next 2 rows literally aren't gonna be able to see shit. And he was like, yeah, perfect. Like come over here. Like so I make that concession to like move because I know in a theater that isn't like enough of an angle, I'm literally just blocking the view of other people.
Yep. I know how that is. I'm not as tall as you, but yeah, I'm familiar with the process.
Experience? Yeah, you know what I mean? Sometimes you gotta learn some tips and tricks to keep these bitches in line.
Eris, there's actually a solution. One thing that you can do is you can carry a potato in your purse. And when you see a person who's like manspreading too much, what you do is you kind of like, as you stumble forward on the subway, you let that thing fall out into their crotch. And that solves the problem. They won't be manspreading much after that.
I feel like I might get arrested in Canada for doing that, for like assault.
Well, it fell out.
Canada, you might be able to get away with
it was your emotional support potato, and it accidentally fell out of your purse.
Ooh, that's actually good. That's good.
Those kinds of arguments work in this day and age.
Remind me not to travel with either of you ever, because I'm not getting my ass kicked for either of you.
Right? No, I will let a woman start a fight and be like, "This isn't my fight." And then be like, "What? You're supposed to protect me." And it's like, "No, you fucking run in your mouth." Like,
a homeless man once got his ass kicked because of me. Exactly what was described, and I still feel guilty about it to this day. Yeah, like I was at a McDonald's and I was eating McNuggets, okay, and I loved my McNuggets, and so I'm eating the McNuggets, and this homeless guy sits next to me, and he just starts like taking my nuggets and my fries. Like he just
No,
starts,
fuck that guy.
like, eating straight right out of them, right?
I
And
remember
he's
this
obviously
one.
like mentally unwell. And I just sat there, and I'm super anti-confrontational. Like, so I just sat there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, this guy's just sitting, breaking this major social norm, like stealing my nuggets, and he just keeps eating them. And then these punks over in the corner see it, and they just flip out as if like they had created their entire gang to defend young women, like in that moment, from having their nuggets stolen. And then they completely beat him up, and the McDonald's place had to call the cops and shit.
No. I support more street gangs beating up homeless people that won't stop harassing and stealing from people.
I don't think he knew what was going on. I think he was very mentally unwell, and they probably could have restrained him and not bashed his teeth in and shit.
Probably
resisting.
neurologically impaired or chemically.
Changes what
both.
the description a little bit.
Yeah, Scott, you actually agreed with me on my tweet that I put out about was this deserved? You know, the fights Twitter, and it was the girl who was, you know, swinging at the boy, and then he finally took one swing back and clocked her. I think you agreed with my take on that one.
I mean, like if you fight somebody, right? Like someone has a right to proportional violence, right? I think when you get to disproportional,
that was not proportional.
No.
Well, I mean, like if you get bodied with one hit,
that's like
you know,
Israel's version of proportional response. That's crazy.
Eris, you promised your dad you'd stay away from this. All right.
I know you.
All right.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to make
now Ben and Panada is going to have a new video on you tomorrow.
Oh fuck. But no, I think like I don't remember the video in question, so I'm just going off of your description, right? But if someone squares up on you and they're like a little person, like that doesn't mean you need to body them, like necessarily. Like if they're like a little girl or a kid or something. But like I think there is it is kind of. Problem is when someone presents a threat to you, right? Then you have a right to defend yourself against that threat, and the gender of the person doesn't matter in that regard, right? But after the threat has been dealt with, if you're like, you know, if you're continuing violence against that person, knowing that the threat is no longer a threat, right? Then you've become the aggressor in the situation. So if some little girl comes up to me and squares up to me and is like, I'm going to kick your ass, and I'm probably going to be like, will you fuck off? And if they like start swinging and hitting me and I body them, like, you know, that's their fucking problem. But if I like then take the unconscious person and decide it's, you know, let's go for the ground and pound, you know what I mean? Like then yeah, I've become the threat at that situation. Like it's already dealt with and I'm doing something worse.
I think the problem with that video, right, was like she like it was hard to see, but from what it looked like, she kind of like open-handed him, and it was definitely like an asshole move. But then he like fully pulls his arm back and does like a full punch, and just knocks her straight to the ground. When it seemed like he so easily could have used his strength to grab her arms or at least just push her away. Or something like that. It seemed like this crazy response.
No man
might be a different video because she didn't hit the ground, and from the sound of it, it sounded like a full-handed slap, like it was a full body slap, because he leans back and then gets all this momentum and slaps her, but it sounded like a slap because like punches. No.
But if we're talking about a scenario
at a school.
Video irrelevant, right? Because I don't know the video we're talking about, so I'd have to see it. So let me describe it, right? Like if a woman comes up to you and starts attacking you and slapping you, right? That's a threat. I have no idea what she's going to do after that if I continue to allow her to commit physical acts of violence against me, right? So I have every right to do any form of violence that stops this from happening, right? Like Locke had a really, like, I use this example.
Violence.
Well, no, what's reasonable, like what's reasonable is not what's important, right? What's important is, am I able to stop the threat, right? Whatever means I need to stop the threat is
but if you had
acceptable.
other means that you could have thought of easily, and there were like other opportunities, and you didn't take those, and you took the harshest one, you still made a decision there. If you could argue that the harshest one was the safer one, fine. But if you can't argue that, then to me that's still a big move.
Generally in these situations, unless you're a highly, highly trained person trained for high stress, unpredictable scenarios, you're usually not thinking along those terms of like, what is the least damage, most effective way to subdue this person or stop them from hurting me. Usually you're responding with whatever is within your means to stop the situation. And if you're not highly trained, that can sometimes be a bit of a spaz out and going a little too aggressive. So most people are not trained enough in those situations to be able to make the lowest damage, highest effectiveness decision.
Yeah. I think the important thing to recognize is what is the threat that is being communicated, right? You have every right to stop the threat that is being communicated, both in restitution and restoration, right? But so if someone, some girl comes up to you and like slaps you and then backs off, right? Or like goes to walk away or something, right? Like then that's a very different situation than someone that's in the act of attacking you and you have no idea what it is. The only thing they've communicated is that they have a desire to hurt you and you have no idea where that ends. That could be all the way up to the loss of your life.
Okay, what if like a creepy guy is hitting on me in, I don't know, an empty subway station? Can I just take out my mace and just mace him?
Well, it depends on what he's communicating.
Maybe he's just hitting on me. I don't know. But he's doing it in like a creepy kind of somewhat like,
So
I
you
don't know,
mean
a way
he's
that's making me
unattractive.
feel like he's a threat.
Creepy means he's unattractive. I get it, right? So an unattractive guy is hitting on you, right? And then what can I do to stop the unattractive guy from hitting on me?
No, but
Right?
he's doing it in like a somewhat aggressive, threatening way. Like, hey, can I get your number? Where do you live? Do you live close by? Let's go back. I can walk you home. Something like that. Very.
Yeah, I mean, if he's like
Can I
persistently,
just take out my mace?
if he's what you described as someone persistently harassing you, right? That is attempting to coerce you with the fact that you're alone and that he has power over you into giving information about where you live and information that can track you down, right? That is a threat that is communicating to me that he might stalk you, that he might rape you, that he might wait for you to go around a
See,
corner.
that's the thing. I feel like people's versions of threats are like, it's so subjective on what is and isn't a threat. That is very like challenging to just automatically assume.
Yeah, but we're not saying automatically. You gave multiple iterations where you communicated presumably that you weren't interested, and he continues trying to find out where you live, trying to and you're alone, and he's in a creepy way. I'm assuming you mean like he's like really close to you and like lording over you, and you're sitting vulnerable in the subway, and he's standing over you, towering you, demanding answers to questions. Like, you know what I mean? Like yeah, like at that point, that's a threat.
Okay, I'll mace them next time.
Yes.
Since you
Yes.
suggested
If
it.
some dude is standing over you alone on a subway, demanding your private information, you're like, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And he keeps hounding you. Like, tell him fuck off or I'm going to mace you, and pull your mace out and point it at his face. And then if he says anything other than I'm sorry and walks away, fucking
But then I'll
pull
get
the
arrested
trigger.
in Canada for assault with a deadly weapon.
Wait,
that's a
macing
factor too.
would get you assault with a deadly
Why do
weapon.
you live in
Oh yeah,
fucking
it's
Canada?
illegal to carry. It's an illegal weapon to carry. As well.
Why do you live in fucking Canada? It's so stupid.
Oh no. Well,
Stun lock. Oh my god.
Like,
Just saying, like if that's the laws of the land you live in, you need to live in a new fucking place, man. Like, fuck off.
you're
No
allowed to
wonder there's
carry-
street gangs of kids fucking trying to find harassers for women.
the
That's
only
just
way
the
to buy
market solution
mace-
to the fucking state not stepping in.
The only way to buy mace in Canada is you buy like bear spray or dog spray, and you have to say that it's for dogs or bears.
Hold on, pause.
like,
You
if
can
you use it on a
bear
human, you're
mace
gonna get
people,
killed.
but not use regular mace?
only if he's like
But
really
you can't
hairy.
use it if you use it against a person, it'll be bad. I just the reason why I still have it is because I just figured that like if I ever feel the need to use it, I'd rather get arrested than whatever violence I felt. You know
that shit expires, right?
Yeah, you got to replace
Just-
that every
Well, how
couple years. It's like
Yeah,
they
like
last
every
for
year
about
or two.
And mine's like 3 years.
1 to
old.
2 years.
Yeah. I
You get
actually,
CS gas?
I have a friend that just carries hairspray that's just supposed to spray at people, and it does the job.
I mean, if you combine it with a lighter, it's a very effective defensive weapon. But no, like honest to God, like if it's more than like 1 or 2 years old, like you should probably throw it out, because if you use that in a situation, it might make the situation way worse because it doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, I don't want you to get hurt in a situation because you tried to mace somebody and he laughs at you because it's ineffective.
That would be my luck, right? Like, I finally figure out how to take the safety off and everything, and it still goes up in my face. That would suck.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and when you spray someone with stuff like that, if it doesn't have a strong effect, they can often like turn to rage at that point and want to do some serious damage to you.
Yeah,
because they took a shot in the face of something.
That's why the number one rule that they always tell women is to just do whatever they want. Like, almost, that's usually like the advice that I've always been given. Like, unless you have like an opportunity.
Because you live in a place where you can't shoot people.
Well, Eris, this has probably come up, but I don't know. Do you know that I carry?
Like, carry a gun?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I didn't know that. Wait, did we have this conversation where you had like a cute little white gun? Was that
No, it was probably someone else.
Okay.
But I do carry, and there are pros and cons to carrying. So carrying any kind of a weapon, really, it's sort of, there's especially a gun is like an immediate escalation to violence, right? Because you have to, if you're going to bring a gun outside the house and use it for personal protection, you have to be prepared that if somebody comes after you, let's say somebody who they were going to take a swing at you or like slam you into the wall in a threatening manner, you can't just assume that you can talk them down at that point. You're kind of forced into the position of drawing that pistol and squaring off on them and being ready to pull that trigger. Because the problem with carrying any kind of a weapon on you is that if it gets taken from you, it can be used against you. And in the case of a gun, that gun can be taken from you and also be used to commit other crimes and kill other people. And that even if
I used to carry knives on me, and I got told that was a dumbass thing to do, specifically for that reason. That was more likely that a guy would just overpower me and take the knife, and now he's got a knife.
So you need to be sort of trained in being prepared to use it and to use it properly, and to have the kind of, mental preparation before you leave the house to know that this could be the day that you have to draw that thing and squeeze that trigger. And also be consciously aware of every time you take it outside of your house, you are placing yourself potentially in a situation of having to use that gun. Now, it kind of depends. There's sort of like the trade-off. Like in my case, so I don't carry the gun with me when I'm out and about in certain areas where I know it's safer, because there's no point in me raising the stakes in an environment where I don't have to worry as much. But when I travel out to areas that are a little bit more country and such, where I may run into some kind of an issue because someone clocks me and they don't like that I'm a 6 foot, nearly 6'2" woman who's kind of broad looking and everything, and they want to, harass me and potentially do damage to me, then that's where I take that pistol with me, is in those kinds of environments. But it's something I have to be prepared for. It's like, I have to sit there and think before I leave the house, am I ready to do this today? Is this something I want to do? And it also forces me to sort of place myself into situations that are less risky. So, like, for instance, I'm not going to go to bars, because odds of, a guy creeping on me in a way that I feel kind of intimidated by are increased substantially at a bar when people have alcohol in their systems. So I'm just not going to go to a bar if I'm going to be carrying that day. That's a bad combination. And I'll take efforts to sort of restrict or limit the risks and the potential need to have to defend myself with lethality.
I want to say one thing to all the guys in chat, right? In terms of this discussion, just a fun little fact. Just because you're a dude, it actually means the exact opposite of what most people intuitively think, right? You're far more likely to be the victim of violence as a man than you are as a woman. Now, Zonia, you're in a bit of a different situation because your category is more likely than both, right? To be a victim of random violence. There's a lot of weird people out there that would take issue with your very existence. But for the most part, like, you're more likely to be robbed, more likely to be jumped, more likely to be like abused in some way or mugged, right? Than a woman is. And so if you're out here like, well, I'm a big dude, so I don't have to worry about it. It's like, you have to worry about it more than Eris does.
Or have to deal with like egotistical challenges.
I don't leave my house. So.
I mean,
you also have a dog. That helps.
Well, I've been like hiking a lot lately, and I would be way too afraid to, because I mean, you always hear about women getting like raped and murdered on hikes, like in the middle of the forest. But ever since I got my dog, like, you know, she looks like a huge wolf. So
I don't think that's actually what happens. I think what it is that like nobody knows what happened, and so it becomes like the news story, right? Like when people like for example in America.
oh yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
We talked about like the Pulse shooting, or not the Pulse shooting, the non-binary weirdo guy that kidnapped his mom and then like shot up a trans LGBT club or whatever, and everyone was like, this is anti-trans hate, and it's like, oh, the guy's crazy. But he also did it like the day before Day of Remembrance or whatever, so it probably was that. But the lunatic guy, right? I was debating it and was like, hey, did you know more people were killed that weekend in Chicago than that guy killed? We just don't talk about it, right? Because it's normalized. I think the same thing is true about like kidnappings and murders and like in like hiking areas, is because it's like this cute little white girl gets kidnapped or killed and nobody knows what happened because you're just out in the middle of nowhere. But like, it's not a news story when someone gets fucking killed in a bad neighborhood in a city, right? So like, we kind of just like let it go. But like, statistically speaking, probably better off hiking with your dog, right, than you are like walking in a bad neighborhood.
I guess that's true. Well, did you guys agree with my Twitter take? I feel like you, Fabian, probably
Which
agreed that that you should be able to hit on someone anywhere.
Yeah, I commented. I think you liked the comment.
Okay, I have bad memory.
Which
Yeah,
I
assumed you would have agreed with me.
I said that you should be able to hit on anywhere, anyone, anytime, right? And this idea.
I don't know
that,
about
like,
anyone. Right?
No,
I feel like
anyone.
hitting on children is a little weird.
Okay. Yeah. So long as, right, which is what I said, so long as, you know, you don't aggress upon anybody, and that would be an act of aggression, hitting on a child, right? Because they can't consent to anything. But like this idea that like, this idea of like people like Melina and like these like girls that post half naked pictures of themselves everywhere online, and then they're like, how dare you say something to me while I'm at the gym in a sports bra and like really tight pants. It's like, who the fuck are you to make any of those things? If you want to go to the gym and not be hit on, right, then go to Curves, go to Planet Fitness, go to a gym, right, where there's a specific contract that says you're not supposed to do certain things. Don't go to fucking Gold's Gym that doesn't have any of those fucking rules and then be like, how dare you fucking talk to me while I'm like backed 6 feet away from the mirror with a ring light on so that everyone can see my hot body and I'm doing poses. Like, it's just fucking asinine, stupid to the 10th degree. It enrages me that these people have this expectation.
I think there is a clear difference that I'm guessing is probably what she means, where there's like a safety thing where, you know, when a dude's like hitting on you in person, it definitely feels very different than like in an online environment or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
so go to a place with those rules.
I'm not a cam girl, but I assume it's like very normalized in those environments. So it's like, it probably is weird when it happens in a place you don't expect it. But
it's
to
weird.
Me, it's like, I guess I just think that it's like we should get used to a bit being somewhat like uncomfortable. Like sometimes, like I've been hit on a lot, like especially like in like the city by guys that were weird, or it was a super uncomfortable situation. I find it even more uncomfortable if the guy's attractive, because then I'm actually worried about how I'm going to respond. So it's like, I think people should be a little more open to those experiences. And it does kind of freak me out, like how many people I know like that with their parents met at work, their parents met like, I don't know, playing sports or did something, and it's basically you can't hit on people in any of those situations now. So it's like, how are people supposed to?
How are guys supposed to not be creepy? That's the real question, because creepy is a subjective feeling that you have based off of how attracted you are to the person, right? And the situation, right? You can do things that are awkward that make it more creepy, or you could be being aggressive and there's plenty of ways that you can do things that are more likely to make the person feel creeped out, right? But if I'm missing half my teeth, right, and like I smell bad, and I'm like a 5'2" stinky hippie with half my teeth missing, there's no way that I can hit on any woman in any way, shape, or form without her going, that guy's a creep. And it's not that, right? So if
I
you
feel
don't
like
allow
you could do
young
it if
men
you
to
felt nice.
experience them, maybe, but like you have to allow people to experiment in social situations and fail and realize, like, you know, where those boundaries are, what works and what doesn't work, how to initiate a conversation. Instead, it seems like women want to be like protected in all places, right, while being equal, but also protected by the power of the state, right? So that the only places that men are even allowed to talk to them is by their specific choosing. And it's like you're just gonna end up with like this kind of incel problem, I guess, exacerbated because most dudes are gonna have no experience and no ability to communicate with women.
Yeah, I just think it's like wasted energy. I would so much rather, focus like I don't know, like energy on telling men how to do it in a respectful way, right? How to not make women like uncomfortable in that, because there's I've been hit on by, like, I agree with you about the creepy thing meaning unattractive, but there also are like grays within that. I've like been hit on by guys that were I found very unattractive, but I never felt uncomfortable. And they were super respectful, and I would never it wasn't a negative experience whatsoever. It was flattering.
They were super respectful and meek and mild, and you happen to find those guys unattractive.
Okay, I see what you just did there. Okay, that's not always the case, but
not always. But I'm just saying.
But just in general, like, I think the biggest thing is just like having no like entitlement. That I think, like, if you hit on someone and you're just like more happy-go-lucky and you're not entitled, even if you're confident and a bit dickish, you're not gonna make the person feel that uncomfortable. And I would so much more focus on that in general. But I don't know.
I hit on everybody.
Like, my take on this is there's a few things to touch on here. One, I think the gym isn't that bad of an environment because the reality is it's unlikely that the only two people in the gym are going to be the guy and the girl, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's a good environment, to be honest.
Right?
Yeah, it's a safer kind of environment. There's another thing also, is that there's sort of like this there's guys have still, we're still, even though we've evolved a lot in terms of like what the roles are, the gender roles and such, it's still mostly on guys to shoot their shot, right? And and they got to do it. And there's unfortunately sort of this growing trend of publicizing guys shooting their shots and framing it as something malicious, sex pests, etc., and predatory even. And that's creating a bit of like a lot of anxiety around guys even shooting their shot, where they're worried that if they try to shoot their shot, that they're going to run into a situation where they're going to be lambasted, accused of being a sex pest, or being a harasser, sexually harassing, etc. And worst case scenario, publicized for it, slandered on TikTok and
I feel
Twitter.
like you're almost talking about the streamer space. That's where everyone's like so careful with how they talk in DMs to one another because you're just terrified of like something being made public. Yeah.
And even though like women are getting a lot of their liberation from more traditionally feminine roles and such, and being more independent, being able to to girl boss and get a lot of be the bread makers, etc., we're still socially, we still haven't pushed past that point where it's upon the guys to shoot their shot, and they're the ones to take action and approach the girl. So there's sort of this imbalance going on where the women are getting a lot of that independence and that power and kind of benefiting from it, but guys are still hitting this wall where they're trying to shoot their shot, and girls are be like, I can't believe that he would even approach me in this situation. I can't believe he'd say that.
You make less than six figures? What a gross person. Like,
so
what makes you think you're worthy of my time is not something that is rarely heard today.
So we need to kind of somehow figure out that balance, and get to a point, either get the girls to feel motivated to start shooting their shot with the guys or something, or I don't know, but we got to get beyond that point. Now there's an imbalance and it's screwing over a lot of guys.
All we need to do is laugh at people that say dumb shit like this creep at the gym. We need to look at you and go, Okay, thought, here's your fucking OnlyFans account. Shut the fuck up and giggle and move on, instead of giving these people this like this sense of like, well, there's a conversation to be had here. No, there isn't. Some dude that you had on camera saw you struggling, walked over and like helped you with your weights, and you were like, and then your response was like, I hope this person never breathes and his genitals are removed. What a monster. Like, no, just be like, fuck you, lady. And everyone should laugh at them and we should move on.
Did you see she put out a twitlonger apologizing? And it was based on the feedback that she got from people?
No, I did not.
Is that where
After
that conversation came from? Like some video? That...
Yeah.
I find like people filming themselves at the gym weird.
She put out the twitlonger earlier today in the morning. And it's actually really interesting.
Follow the
I read
drama
through
as
it.
much
I mean, it's kind of cool because like what you're saying, Scott, basically happened and worked. And she reconsidered her whole perspective on it and realized that she had jumped the gun on it. And she came out and apologized, and she actually thanked people for the feedback and said that it opened her eyes to things.
I'm so much more misogynist and skeptical than you. I'm pretty sure she just saw her OnlyFans subscriptions going down because people were mad at her and was like, oh, actually, I learned my lesson.
It probably was the opposite. Probably the controversy like added to people watching her OnlyFans, I'm guessing.
She did admit that the controversy was sort of like the goad that got her to apologize, but she says that she had actually looked through the feedback and reconsidered things and saw things differently. So
do you really think we can get to a place though where women, it's just as incumbent on women to be like hitting on men as men are hitting on women?
No, of course not.
Probably
that's
not.
like I like to me like that world sounds so like it sounds so weird.
I mean,
and it's easy to just say like, because I would just never do that like with a guy, like it's just so, I don't know, it's so like I could definitely open opportunities for them, but I've never been able to fully make the first move. And I would
find it unattractive. I would find it unattractive if a girl like came up to me and was like,
most guys I've spoken to said the exact opposite, right?
I mean, I'm just giving my personal opinion. Like if a girl came up to me and was like assertive about like wanting to date me or something, I would be like, I would be like off put. Like this something weird's going on here. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's why, like, for me, it's like, I don't know how much of it is I was socialized this way, which is weird because I was raised by second wave feminists, or like how much of it is just somewhat, I don't know, biological. That's just like this like instinct that I have to be skeptical of guys. So I don't know, like it's hard.
I mean,
for
I've had it happen to me. I've had it happen to me before, and like when it happens, it's like, oh, this is weird.
I was pursued. So before I transitioned, when I was still male presenting back in 1998, I had a woman who pursued me rather aggressively.
God damn, how old are you? You look good for your age.
45. I turned 45 this month.
Sonia,
you're 45?
Yeah.
You look fucking amazing. Holy shit, dude!
Thanks.
I was 8 years old in fucking 98. I had no idea. I thought you were like my age.
Well,
holy shit! All right, sorry.
Sonia can make a fortune on anti-wrinkle creams because, like, I'm like,
right?
No, I've got wrinkles. You just can't see them right now, but they're little fine ones by the eyes. But no, so my girlfriend that I dated at the time, she pursued me rather aggressively, and so for me, I didn't really have any kind of sexual interest whatsoever, right? But I thought it was kind of cool because it was like, obviously like the norm at the time that everybody had girlfriends and stuff, you know, or boyfriends, etc. And so I knew that I was supposed to have a partner of some sort, but I had zero interest. So the fact that there was a woman who was like really aggressively pursuing me made things a lot easier. And so I could, you know, consider like, okay, well, maybe let's see this thing through and see what it's all about.
I know so many people like that, the way you're saying, where they're like, you know, they end up just with the person that happened to hit on them, right? Or like,
that was me. I did it with two people, but I was pursued by a guy after that. After I broke up with her, I was pursued with a guy. I dated exactly two people in my entire life, a woman and a man, back to back, and that was it.
You tried either. Now you just need to try xenogender just to see.
Jeez. Yeah, but it's, I don't know, it was sort of like refreshing at the time because there was so much social pressure around, like, as a guy, you're supposed to do the pursuing. and I couldn't even fathom myself doing that, like pursuing anybody. Like I didn't understand the reason, other than that there was a lot of social pressure around it, especially back then, right? So to me, that dynamic was really effective. And like you think about all the guys today who have deal with a lot of social atomization, grow up in the internet days, especially if they kind of have their their social development period across like 2020 and 2021 when we had all the lockdowns. There's a lot of things that are going to contribute to a lot of boys and young men not having very strong social skills and sort of the kind of social dynamics they need to pursue a girl in a way that's going to be amenable. And it's so, I mean, a lot of them could benefit from a girl who pursues that,
right? Men learn by failing. Like that's how men learn. That's how they build. That's how they grow.
It's
right?
Kind of how everybody learns, right?
Well, not the same way with girls. In when we're talking about this situation of approaching, right? Like women are at their peak, at their prime, in their very early 20s, right? Like that's when they're most valuable towards a relationship. You get over 30 and you're kind of already in a situation where if you don't have children yet, like you're likely to not be able to have children or very many children, right? And you're a lot of issues there. You're becoming less valuable to men because like men don't care how much money you make and things like that, or success, right? And so men, on the other hand,
men are always the ones who want to have kids now, right?
I mean, it's a problem that both men and women don't want to have kids as much. But nevertheless, if the goal is a family with children, right? Like that's kind of something that happens in your mid to late 20s and begins to die off as you go over 30, right? But I think the thing is that men learn by failing, and we recognize when we're young men we have nothing to offer. Like, sure, there are a few people that are like incredibly attractive, very smart, very charismatic, or like they establish their career at a very young age, etc. But like most men that are 18 to 24, they really don't have much of anything to offer anybody, right? They don't have an established
just
career.
Shitting on women though for wanting a guy with 6 figures.
I was joking about the fact that like that's a way that they could say that they're creepy because they don't have that, right? Not per se that they value men with an established career, right? And so, but like part of that is, how do you establish a career? Well, you fail and you figure out where you fucked up and you do better, right? How do you hit on women? You fail, you fuck up, you do better, right? Like you learn through all of these failures. Whereas I think the dynamic, just from a biological reality, and maybe biology can be subverted in the future, but it's not the reality yet, right? Where the value is going to be on younger women, right? It's going to be on women that are 22 to 26. And so I don't know that like you can reverse the roles to such a degree where you're going to have a culture, right? Because the culture is in some ways, how it's done can be socially constructed, but it has to be based on biological reality. And the biological reality is that men have much longer to figure it out, and that women have a much shorter window, and that women are usually hypergamous and choosing men that are a little bit older, a little bit more well-established, and things of that nature. So I think that kind of almost creates a dynamic that where it's incumbent upon the man to show that they're strong, that they're confident, and to approach women.
Why is everyone talking about this stuff lately? Do you think it's just Andrew Tate? It's just radicalized everyone?
I think it's a growing problem in our society. We have lowering birth rates.
There was like a big thing for a while, like with like the game and pickup culture. I don't know, like 10 years ago, and then it went away, and every guy was going back to pretending he was a feminist. And
probably the pandemic.
You think the pandemic did it?
Well, I think the major thing is that slowly but surely our society is getting away from social interactions with humans, and dating culture is going on to apps and places where if you're not in the top 10 to 15% of men, you basically have zero chance of garnering any attention. And so it exacerbates kind of the process of women looking for better value men and the struggle that young men have. And there's this whole idea of like, and so I think it exacerbates some of the men that are in a society that increasingly shits on them, tells them that they're part of the problem, and then they're having less and less opportunities, and they're giving up instead of working on themselves to be in that top echelon or like figure out ways to improve themselves to be in that category. And I think the pandemic has exacerbated moving dating onto the online space. And I think it's that would be my hypothesis.
Yeah. I mean, this is largely what I've been thinking too. This is something I've talked about a couple times on my own streams. And like, I think that one of it sounds kind of shitty, but the reality is before the days of dating apps, you were kind of forced to lower your expectations to have people that you can even feasibly date, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have like this selection on a phone where you could just pick the cream of the crop, right? It was about what was available to you in your environment, in your community, in your culture, etc.
Have you ever read The Bell Curve?
Yeah,
Oh,
long
no.
time ago.
Yeah, I mean,
no.
like, everyone gets mad about that one chapter about race IQ, right? But like if you've read it, you understand the main thesis of the book is actually that people used to be in a community and date in a community, and that IQ was fairly normalized. And what has happened is you go to Harvard and you meet another Harvard person, right? And you end up meeting a really high IQ person isn't normalized in the village anymore. Really high IQ person meets another really high IQ person, and that there's a growing gap between people because of the ability to find mates in a larger category of people, and that this is likely creating a growing distance in IQ between the wealthy elite and like the normies.
So one thing I was going to kind of also bring up, well, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but like Scott,
we're supposed
you
to talk about chasers, but we're just chilling. You know what I mean? So whatever. We'll get there eventually.
You mentioned earlier, Scott, about men learn by failure, and they have to try, fail, learn, evolve from there and go forward, and eventually get better at shooting their shot with women. But like, what do you think of this? Because I'm not sure exactly how this plays out. I haven't dated in a couple decades, right? And I had very little involvement in the first place. But I hear more and more about guys talking about like they're terrified of receiving the label creep. And like once they get that label, it's very difficult because it kind of gets like whispered around from girl to girl in their social circles, and they get kind of poisoned. The well gets poisoned for them and their ability to shoot the shot. And how a lot of these social circles are now online and spread across multiple environments, they kind of get the well poisoned for them across multiple communities online. And so they're terrified of getting the creep label that will follow them around wherever they go, and that girls will like DM people when they go into another community. Girls will be like, oh, you don't want to associate with that guy, he's a creep. Is this something that any of you have familiar with or have heard as well? And like, do you think it's a valid issue?
Well, I think all guys fear that. I don't know if it's growing because of online spaces, because I think online spaces can actually open you up to a larger audience, and you can more easily like move from one place to another. And I think predators do this often as well, like actual creeps, right? Like you can be in a Discord server and then just be in a totally different Discord server or totally different online space. I can tell you that I have experience being on the shit end of that stick. Like when I was in like my first year of community college, before I went to my 4-year kind of like undergrad, right? I dated a girl for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months. And we were hanging out one time, and we were drinking, right? And it was like the first time we had sex was when we were drinking, right? We'd been dating for a couple weeks. And so she then, after we broke up, months and months later, right? Like went around telling everybody that I raped her. Just like told the whole school that I raped her and that I was a rapist because I got her drunk and had sex with her. And like, if I had been like a timid, like confident person, like this would have ruined me. This would have destroyed me. But like, luckily for me, I'm the type of person that talks to everybody and will call out bullshit when I see it. And so like I had no problem telling people, it was like, yeah, I raped her. Let me tell you what actually fucking happened. She stood in the doorway and got naked and then looked at me and said, are you going to be a pussy or are you going to fuck me? And then walked into my bedroom. Yeah, I really raped her then. And if she was so traumatized by the rape, why did I go to her family's?
The women making the first move.
I mean, that's a little different. I made the first move,
but if she gets naked,
made
then
the
it's
second.
Okay.
She certainly made the second, right? But like, and then she took me to her family's Thanksgiving after that. It was like, yeah, like get the fuck out of here. Like that's not how that happened. But like, if I was like a more timid, less confident person, right, that like had a fear of like confronting that social situation, that would have spread like wildfire, and it would have ruined my life, at least in that college. Right. And might even have like at a certain point, it might have gotten so bad that the police might have gotten involved and like in things of that nature and like had to explain this like to police, you know, like, but it didn't because like I was just like, no, I'm not taking this bullshit. Like I know who you talk to, like fuck out of here. So like, yeah, I mean like that's a fear, but like, you know, I don't know the answer to that problem because I think men are so demonized in our culture. I mean, men have always been demonized in our culture, right? That's
well, you guys are easy to demonize.
Yeah, but it's like, but there's always been like, you know, feminists talk about the patriarchy, right? But the patriarchy was mostly about protecting women from men, right? Like that was the design of the patriarchy, and you wanted to break away from that because it meant protecting you from
factor. I wouldn't say it was
but okay, like in the Christian West, right? Like
no, it's definitely not mostly. It was because it was an efficient system for dividing labor and shit. Like that's, I don't know. It seems crazy to just automatically like assume that it was.
I mean, I think the patriarchy is mostly a myth until you're talking about like the 1700s and 1800s and really the early 1900s to begin with, anyways. Right? You're talking about two groups of predominantly poor people struggling together, and right, it's an efficient labor system and it's an efficient way of like, you know, ensuring that your daughters, you know, are and sons are, you know, in appropriate families and things of that nature. But there's an element of control and a lack of freedom there, right? But I think we've always going to be a society that values what I mean. Like look at Twitch, right? If I was an attractive female, I'd be 10 times bigger of a streamer than I am, right? Because dudes prefer to fucking listen to females and value females over males. Like that's just a fact, right? Like it's just we're biologically wired to want to protect women and to value their safety and security.
Do you think if you were a trans woman, you'd be more popular?
If I was an attractive trans woman, probably. Like, you know, I think aesthetics plays a huge role in this. If I was an unattractive trans woman, right?
Well,
like I don't know that it would help me.
Like what you mean is not that if you were a woman, you mean if you were an attractive woman, right?
Yeah, well, for sure, right. You garner a lot
like
more
when
sympathy
men talk
as an
about
attractive
women. Like they're only talking about attractive women. Like they're just like they don't even consider unattractive women like human or even worth mentioning.
I don't know that they don't consider them human, but yeah, I think they are. It's a selection bias thing, right? You know what I mean? Like when you talk about, for example, the Twitch streamer and popularity, right? You know what I mean? Like you're gonna like the popular Twitch streamers that everybody is gonna know are gonna be attractive people or people that are masters in their craft in some regard, right? Like the unattractive woman that doesn't bring anything else to the table other than being a woman sits at the same fucking view count I do or below. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like talking about like crazy.
I was trying to segue into the Chasers discussion. You know,
yeah, well, let's get into the Chaser discussion. I'm for it. That's what we originally came here to talk about, anyways.
Well, yeah, because I'm an expert on it as a non-trans woman and someone that doesn't chase trans women. Usually, you know, I felt like I really had a lot to contribute to this subject. So.
Of course, but you are a woman that people like to see on camera. So you know, there is that. You know.
I feel like people have thought I was trans before. There's a lot of trans people who are VTubers, and they're VTubers specifically because of their gender dysphoria. So.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, not uncommon.
Yeah, actually, 9 out of 10 VTubers I've met were trans. So, like, really, really common.
Yep, I know quite a few of them myself.
I'm sure you
Okay,
do.
Yeah.
So
I have a
let's get
question
into
for
this.
Zonia. I have a
Creepy
question.
Creepo World says, "Oh, we're watching poly people." Oh god. Oh god. Poly
I have a
people is a
question.
special case.
So why are chasers bad? That's like what I want to know, because I feel like, especially in a world where like so many people like demonize trans women and tell trans women that they're not attractive and stuff, I would think like a group of people saying like, no, we really want you would sound great. But is there like a fear of them being unsafe and everything like that? Is that why it's bad?
Okay, so what I'm going to do, because my position is different from that of the more popular position. My position is more like, people are attracted to what they're attracted to. There isn't necessarily an explanation for it or the ability to even control that attraction, right? And that attraction can range from any number of things. Like you could be sexually attracted to the idea of someone who used to be a male for all intents and purposes, who then transitioned into a feminine presentation. That's something that people are attracted to, even the concept, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that attraction personally. I think attractions happen, right? And there's not really a way to like rationalize someone's attraction away, right? You're just not going to do it. So there's no point in like beating somebody over the head for having an attraction that they can't control. Now the question is, how does that attraction affect other people? And does that attraction do harm? I don't think overall chasers do harm, but I do know that for at least for a lot of dysphoric women who have like gender dysphoria, one of the problems with a chaser letting them know that they're attracted to them because they're a trans woman is that it sort of otherizes them and places them as, well, no, I'm not attracted to you because you're a woman. So
They just want to be a woman, not a trans woman.
I'm attracted to you because you're a trans woman, right?
Yep.
And so that can be very triggering of dysphoria. And I've felt it before too. I've been hit on by a lot of guys who clock me as being trans, and they're attracted specifically to the fact that I'm trans. And I try to be understanding of it, but it does suck when someone's telling you the whole reason why they're attracted to you is because you're not technically a woman, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks.
That's my position too, basically, is that but I mean, I would take a more, maybe dislikable position, which is that it proves that that's the real hate. The real hate of chasers is not that they're particularly creepy compared to anybody else, right? It's a pejorative that says that your sexual attraction is a problem. And we like to problematize somebody that is attracted to this specific type of person because it proves that you're not the same thing, which you're not. Obviously,
for some girls who transition early, who have, for all intents and purposes, the complete and total outward appearance of being a female, biologically speaking, it's kind of like it's hard to split hairs on that, right? They pass. Well, it's like they completely pass, but the problem is then at some point somehow they find out, like a chaser finds out that person used to be, or was biologically male, and suddenly they're like, oh shit, that's hot. It's like, well, wait, before they told you that, you thought that they were just a woman from birth onward, right? But then that all switched because they told you that they were trans, and now you're attracted to them because of that. And that's where I'd kind of be like, well, it's a little weird. I'm still not going to judge them for it because, again, it's a sexual attraction and they're attracted to that uniqueness. People are attracted to the unicorns in the world, right? The strange people, the people that are one-off, the people that are unusual and unique, right? So I'm not going to shame them for having that attraction, but it does create this sort of like, suddenly the line now exists to separate the person from being a woman just because she said that when she was born, she was assigned male at birth, but there was no way you could have told otherwise. So there was no line between her and what is considered to be a woman until she actually told you. that she
two
was
things.
biologically different.
Two things I want to say about that. Number one, and this gets into the fetishization conversation, right? Which is, if I'm dating a girl, right? And let's say I really like pretty feet. Me personally, never really got it. Never really understood it. Like, I just have no particular attraction to feet. Like, it's just not my thing. I've been into some weird shit. Trust me. This isn't
you gotta
me
have
trying
one
to,
of
like,
the two. You gotta have one of the two popular internet fetishes. It's either feet or vor. Which one you got?
Oh, God,
See, if girls were
neither.
like guys, they would
But-
be like,
Harpooning.
"Oh, you haven't seen my feet yet."
but like, so like the thing is, right, is like, but if I go out to the beach, right, and we go on a beach date or something, and then I see your bare feet and I'm really into feet, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, you're hotter to me because you have these really pretty feet, right? Then what is the substantive difference between that and the person that has all of the secondary sexual characteristics of, being biologically female, but then I discover this path, this journey, and let's be honest, this is the second thing I want to talk about, which is that a lot of chasers have a specific attraction to penises. They like the idea that you have a penis. Right.
It's the
and so,
hottest
like,
porn out there.
Right. It's
I've always
huge...
wondered that, but what happens if you have intense dysphoria about your penis, right? A lot of trans women I know do, right? So what do you do in that situation?
Well, is it any different? Is it any different than, let's say, a mainland Chinese person who was still under the, some horrible family that bound their feet, right? If some dude's into that, and then you're like, this is a traumatic thing for me, right? The fact that my parents bound my feet, this is something that, like, is disturbing to me, and this is what you're into, then yeah, you have every right to be like, I don't like that. But that doesn't necessarily make the person, right, a bad person because they have a sexual preference, right? And the problem is, the reason chaser is so different than any other form of fetish, if it is a fetish, right, or preference, depending upon the position, is that many people in the trans rights area and in what I like to say in the cult, right, are of the position that trans women are women, and I get to define my identity, and you have to respect my identity, and the world revolves around how I define myself, which is not how identities work. Like, it's constructed with other people, but no, they get to demand that on you. And it's a political rage that is about their own identity, because your very preference recognizes them as not biological females or women.
Yeah,
I always assumed. Oh, sorry.
No,
and so it becomes
ahead.
a pejorative against people that are bigots because they have a preference that, like, would kind of almost put them in your camp, but they don't have the right opinions.
I always assumed
their sexuality.
that it had to do, and I guess, like, it's interesting. I've actually never heard the reason that Zonia brought up, because that makes so much sense to me. But I always assumed it had to do with, like, objectification, like feeling like there was something that I guess was, like, fetishized about you rather than, and it makes you feel like an object rather than like a complex human being, blah, blah. Like, it's interesting. Like, I'm part Asian, right? And it's very common for Asian women to be, like, fetishized or objectified and all that kind of stuff for that reason.
Chill.
And I've always heard that, but it was something that never bothered me. And I've been called, like, the names, like, oh, like, you look exotic, or like, and when people try to figure out where I am and all those moments, and it never bothered me at all, because to me it was like, okay, well, I prefer that you like that I'm part Asian rather than dislike it. So
yeah, it's actually pretty similar.
So it seemed like a similar thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, in America, right? Like what percentage of people are, trans, right? Well, that's a hard thing to determine, because, up until 10 years ago, you would have said 0.02%, right? And now trans as an identifying thing, right, as opposed to individuals with persistent, gender dysphoria from a young age, it's a totally different thing, right? But let's assume, for whatever reason, 1%, right? Let's multiply that old standard of persistent gender dysphoria, right? And let's assume some level of social acceptance brings the percentage of true trans, whatever the fuck that is, right, to 1%, right? Well, if you're in America, in the South, and you're percentage-wise, that's likely to be the same thing for Asian, right? Like, Asians only make up 4% of America, right? And if you're in an area where that percentage is lower, like if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, right? It's the same thing, right? Like preferring and wanting to seek Asian women because that's what you find attractive is likely reaching that like 1% threshold. And so like, I don't know that there is actually a lot of substantive difference between those two. It's actually probably more similar, like from a data-driven perspective.
So what you're saying is that I basically have the trans female experience and I can just, use my lived experience to talk over trans women.
I'm declaring it so that it's not stolen valor. You're valid.
I have the
man. See, like, the other thing that like is really interesting. So this is my personal experience, right? So I've been called a chaser before, which is wild to me, right? In certain online spaces, because I will simply say, I like trans women. I think they're fucking hot. Like the ones that are hot, just like women, right? Like, like some women are ugly. Like, I don't think they're hot, right? And a lot of other dudes will be like, whoa, right? Like, you're fucking weird for that, right? But the funny thing is that like, they'll call me a chaser. And this is what like keyed me into the political thing, right? Is because I have 2 children, right? Like all of my long-term relationships of any length have all been biological women. Right. So it's obviously not that I'm a chaser by the definition of like specifically seeking these people. Right. And yet they call me a chaser. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And it keyed me on really deeply to this idea that it is really a pejorative to say that you're not saying trans women are women. Right. That you're attracted to me, but you're otherizing me, or you're saying that I'm something different. I don't have a fetish for you. It's not a particular interest. Right? Like maybe to some degree, but it's not like that's like all I would go after. Right. And it showed me that it was like, I have the wrong political opinions and I'm triggering their dysphoria by like stating you're not this other category. And then it's like,
well,
you know what I mean?
Okay. Well, it could still technically be a fetish. It just depends on what the motivation is. Right. So like I know a couple guys. So there's 2 guys that I know who they love having sex with trans girls that are pre-op, but they don't want a relationship with them. So they prefer a relationship with a cis woman, but they enjoy having
that
sex
goes towards
with
the
pre-op trans
objectification
women.
thing. Like you're just a sexual object.
So that kind of veers in the territory of objectification or maybe even fetish. Like if they like him specifically for having
children,
the penis. No, it's just a thing.
Curious.
Like
fair enough.
The 2 people that I know, they don't even have kids. So it's just more about like they prefer the relationship with the cis woman, but they like girl dick. So that is kind of, sounds a bit like a fetish to me, especially with one of them in particular, because he's talked about specifics that he likes to do with girl penises. So.
Right? It's like that they're sexually attracted to them, but then they're not gonna actually make them like a legit partner in their life or something, because it's
very objectified,
like bug chasers.
Yeah, I was about to say like chubby chasers, right?
I thought you said bug chaser. I thought you said bug chasers.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I definitely said bug chaser.
Oh, he did.
Let's talk about bug chasers. That's a great topic.
So, but no, like I think I don't want to talk about bug chasers, but gross. That's like anti-life, right? Like you're intentionally seeking out something as a means of getting sick. Like that, there's something that's paraphilic. That goes in the category of a paraphilic disorder because
there's something wrong with wiring at that point.
Well, I mean, like I wouldn't say that being a chaser for trans people, right, is paraphilic, right? Because unless for whatever reason it is actively harming your life, right? But like bug chasing is clearly a paraphilic disorder. But like chubby chasers, I think what I've noticed, right, is that there are guys that like having sex with larger women, right? But don't like the social stigma of dating a larger woman, right? Like they don't want to be seen in public with a larger woman.
Yeah, so it's probably very similar.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a very similar thing, except a larger woman can lose weight. A trans person can't I mean, they can detrans, but like they're gonna go and do the original, you know what I mean, biological thing. Like they can't undo being assigned female or male at birth, right? Like that's not possible.
Wonder if there's people who fetishize not trans people, but detrans people specifically.
It's such a small category that it'd be like there would be no data on it.
I thought detransitioners don't exist. I thought it was all a figment of like.
Well, I've spoken to several.
It's like the ultimate unicorn, right? It's like that rare that it's the ultimate unicorn.
I don't know. Like I'm sure it's got to be somebody's thing, right? Like everybody's got a thing, you know. But I mean, like, are you capable of even acting that out, really? Unless like you're really wealthy and you can fly around the world, like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how do you like? You're talking about a percentage of the population that's so like that's like having a fetish for people with like elephantitis of the foot. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about an incredibly small group of people.
I don't know. People are into weird ass shit. Like the
for sure.
I was once talking to a guy. I thought I knew all the weird shit people were into. But I was once talking to a guy and he confessed that he was into transformation stuff. And I assumed when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, he's into trans girls. All right. So I was like, okay, that, you know, it's not going to work out. Okay. But then I Googled it.
Did he mean like Animorphs or something?
Yeah, I Googled it and it's like this whole world of, and it's this huge community of mostly dudes who are into forcefully transforming women into animals or aliens or something. Often cows. And it's
who cows?
Who cows?
And Sue cows.
And
yeah,
it's like,
super creepy.
and it's like things with like special types of
werewolves
like bondage.
too.
Yeah, there's things like with special
It's
types
always
of bondage
non-consensual too, which I found weirdly interesting. I was like, so if she wants to be a cow, you don't want to do it to her? It's like, yeah, it ruins it.
Well, no, it's not always non-consensual. I think it's usually CNC, right?
Well, is it really CNC when you can't physically like? That must really suck to have a fetish that's just not physically possible, like in the real world. You know, like
it's a
you
problem.
Can't do it.
I mean, you know, you can. You know, I mean, like, you know, I mean, it's just, you know,
no, you
can't. Belong in jail.
You can't turn a human into a cow. It can't happen.
I mean, fair enough.
With that attitude.
Have you seen Tusk?
Yeah, we gotta watch Tusk
you mean
sometime.
Are you talking about the Alejandro Jodorowsky film?
Justin Long was in it. I remember that. And Fat Haley Joel Osment.
I love Justin Long. He's so cool.
Man,
it's one of the most disturbing films of all time.
There's some weird stuff out there, that's for certain. You know, okay, so obviously I'm kind of known for being a prude and for shaming people and their kinks and fetishes, right? But the reality is I'm actually fairly sex positive. A lot of that is sort of a meme, right? Where I do the shaming and everything. It's kind of a meme that's part of my aesthetic with my streams and such. But overall,
yeah,
I'm kind of like
me personally, I like being honest, you know. But, you know,
as you know, when it comes down to it, I'm very live and let live. As long as you're not doing harm to others, it's pretty cool, you know. Obviously, when we're here on the internet, things tend to get a little bit more like pushy and stuff, and people really kind of want to like thrust things into like your environment and your community and such like that. So so I've developed a little bit of this sex negative sort of facade that's a part of my aesthetic to sort of say, not here, not my community, right? And it's turned into a bit of a meme. And it started out originally as a bit of like sort of a self-defense, you might say, because when I first started streaming, I was a gaming streamer and I did mostly like family-friendly kind of streams. But as I started to get into doing political commentary and involving myself more as a streamer in the political commentary world, I started getting a lot more of this people really wanting to like push their sexual interests on me and into my community and such. I got hit on a lot more, got a lot more dick pics than I used to, all kinds of things. And so
why is no one from my community send me dick pics, right? If y'all got pretty dicks, send them over, boys.
Well,
So I started putting it out there as like, in a way, like
I will shame your ugly dicks if you send me dick pics.
Now you can suck your own dick.
Like the bright red plant with the thorns and stuff, where where all the creatures of the wild know, yeah, that's not the plant that I'm going to try to eat, right? I started putting out that facade as sort of like a self-defense, be like, yeah, don't bring your degeneracy here, don't hit on me, bad idea, right? So that's where that sort of developed. But overall, I'm very much like, hey, whatever floats your goat, I'm cool with it, and just do it over there.
I thought I was sex positive, but it felt like, especially over the last 5 years, guys started doing things where they would try to reframe being like an asshole when they hit on you into being a sex positive feminist, right? And if you refuse them, then you were like,
allies
a
are
sex
creepy.
negative. And
like it's true.
And I was like, wait.
Feminist allies are all fucking creeps. There's no reason for some dude to be a feminist. If you meet a male feminist, you're talking to a fucking weirdo.
Okay, I don't know if I completely agree with that. However, I have noticed that a lot of like the language has been used in order to curry favor in them. There was one time this guy and I were texting and we were talking, but he asked me out on a date. I said yeah. He sounded really cool, and so we arranged to do something, and we're trying to figure out like a place where we'd both enjoy eating. Then he suggests like this place, and I didn't recognize it, so I Googled it, and it's a sex club, right? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know how much you guys know me, but I'm like insanely shy. So the idea of being in a normal club is already terrifying. But being in a sex club, like that sounds psychotic. So I told him, especially for a first date. So I was like, I don't know, that seems a little weird. Like maybe, and I was trying not to be judgmental on it. I was like, maybe we can just go to an Italian restaurant or something. Right? And
pretty aggressive.
That's unreasonable. That's
move.
just unreasonable.
No. Like you fucking like red flags are red flags, all right? Like if someone gives you a fucking red flag, just fucking move on.
I don't know. I live in a very lefty community where my friends are like, yeah, that sounds like a great place. It'll be funny. And but then he
Fucking
responds
Canada.
so negatively. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable in going to that place. He's like, you don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything. It's just like a fun, cool environment. Are you like sex negative? Is that what this is about? Are you sex negative?
Oh no.
And
Right. So
was like-
so you haven't even been on a date with this guy, and he's already trying to like gaslight you into thinking that your boundaries are making you a negative person. Like, yeah,
and he was way
run
more
away from
lefty
the
than I
narcissist.
was. He was way more lefty than I was, right? And he's using like just very typical like pressure tactics. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is gonna work, dude. And so I fully like reject him, try to be nice about it. He gets even more mad, and then he sends me a revenge dick pic, which is apparently a thing. So,
Jeez.
told me
The way
that's what I
that
was missing.
the retort that would work for you when it's a leftist is you respond and you say, no, I'm not sex negative, I'm just misinterest. That would have worked. That would have shut him down.
Wait, like,
there's
I'm
nothing
just
he could have done
misandrist?
about it.
Or-
Yeah
You just
Oh,
hate
yeah
men.
yeah
I
you just
could've
hate
said
men.
that.
That would have worked perfectly. He would have
And then I would
no
have turned him from a lefty into an incel.
There you go, win-win.
There you go. You would have red pilled him. I
Have you
mean-
guys like kept up with the red pill stuff and like where it's going these days?
No, can we please not talk about red pill, please? I beg.
I don't.
you
fucking-
tired
I
of
don't.
it?
Yeah,
I thought this was like your topic.
But yeah, what do you mean it was my topic? How is it my topic?
That was supposed to be sarcastic, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mark's sarcasm is dry.
it's-
It takes a while to get used
It's
to.
very dry. Yeah, it's
No,
definitely not my topic.
I don't. Yeah, I follow it enough to like kind of see what's going on, so that like I'm not blindsided by something that I don't know. But most of those people, I just don't get it. To me, it seems like what has occurred, right, is that if I had to break down masculinity into 3 stages, right, it is kind of how it feels, right? The first stage is one that has never encountered their own masculinity, right? These are male feminists, for example, right? These are, your soy boy, I'm a vegan kind of guy, right? Like that is, very left wing, and it's like, violence is so evil, like no one should ever use violence or anything like that. And then what ends up happening is we've pushed so many people into this space. I don't know if it's, microplastics or just politics or whatever, but there's so many people in this space that
soy.
Right. There's the second stage, which I would say feminists, to a certain degree correctly identify as toxic masculinity, right? The problem is that feminists think that all forms of masculinity are toxic masculinity. Unless, of course, the dude is hot and it's their husband, but anybody else, it's fucking toxic to be a man, right? But this is, embracing violence, right? This is embracing the alpha male shit. And this seems to be where most of the red pill community sits, right? It's like the Andrew Tates of the world. Like they're giving good advice. And the problem is that I think they are giving some good advice. The problem is that they don't have integrated masculinity, which is what I would consider like the third stage, right? It's kind of that idea of like, it's better to be a samurai in a garden or like a warrior in a garden. Mark knows the phrase better, right? The exact phrase.
Oh, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah, right. Like this idea that you have integrated masculinity, that Nietzsche said it when he said, are you really brave or are you just a coward? Right? Like this idea that like you have to fail, you have to fight, you have to be understanding of physical violence because that's a reality of the world as a man. And I think it's extremely detrimental to boys that we don't let them fight. We don't let them as young kids kind of engage in some of that behavior and horseplay is this evil thing. And so they don't get to a place where they're able to integrate all of those things where it's Beauty and the Beast, right? The Beast is a monster. He's toxic masculinity. He's abrasive. He's angry. He kidnaps Beauty, right? But it's her softness and her love that allows him to become a full man, right? Allows him to recognize that violence is necessary, but that violence should be saved for protecting the things and the people that you love, right? And that it's not good to be violent, but it's also not good to be passive because that's a weak person, and weakness is far more evil than even the toxic anti-hero. And so it seems like the red pill community to me is stuck in this toxic, angry, men are becoming soy boy bitches, and we need to be ballers and like, celebrating fucking sex traffickers for crying out loud, right? And they're not in that final stage because we've lost so much of like masculinity in our society that we're willing to separate a watered down, ineffective, bad form of masculinity.
It's like they notice like that a lot of
what? You're not coming through audio wise. Your lips are moving.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
They notice things in that, have legitimate concerns behind them. But most ideologies have that, where there's like some legitimate like hints of truth like within them, and that's really how they get people. Especially when you have the majority people, they become really successful when you have like the majority of people denying certain truths that are just very obvious. So that makes sense to me. But at the same time, it's like this weird self-fulfilling prophecy. I was watching when Destiny went on that Fresh and Fit podcast or whatever. It's so strange. Like the men that were on there and the women that were on, they're so different than the type of men and women I interact with regularly, either in real life or
very much a selection bias there.
Yeah, and I remember, and I watched this men, and I was like, I would hate women too if I was the type of guy that was attracting those types of women, right? And those were the types of women I was interacting with on an average basis. And I would probably, and if I was the girls, I would hate men too, because they kind of all
Fresh
desert one another.
Fresh and Fit's such a great example because you have someone as brain dead as Destiny and not so erudite being able to blow their minds with just normal shit, Like just normal data and like a little bit of coming to reality, and they're like, wow, look how smart and good these people are. And it's like, dude, they're fucking midwits.
Wait, was Erudite on there? I don't think she was.
Yeah, the second time that Stephen went on,
I didn't realize.
I think,
I didn't
or
watch
third
that one.
third time that Stephen went on, it was with Erudite as well, and they did a whole round
Yeah,
table
you know,
thing.
it's like,
she was pretty awesome.
yeah, it's like if you get schooled by not so erudite, like that's a fucking that's rough.
I disavow these statements that Scott is making
Yeah, I know you
about
do.
Erudite and Stephen.
I'm too much of a
Don't want to
woman
piss
do
off
anything about it.
DGG by saying that Destiny's a fucking midwit when he is.
Well, no, I like them both. I like them both, especially Kyla. I especially like Kyla.
Who's
But
Kyla?
that's
I don't know.
Erudite.
Yeah, that's her name.
Oh, sorry, I don't know her real name. I just know that she's
Yeah.
a coward.
Disavow. So
I'm gonna talk
I
shit.
find-
Like, fuck her, man.
I find that like a lot of these kinds of online community or online movements, particularly online movements, oftentimes have a lot of descriptive truth to them, but a lot of just very ignorant prescriptions that would just seek to further the problem. And I see that with the red pill community, where they can oftentimes be descriptively accurate in many things, not all things, but in many things, and yet come up with some of the worst possible prescriptions that would just make the situation worse, or swing it completely in the wrong direction and exacerbate issues.
I think
watched
what
that
happens
Andrew-
more often.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I watched that Andrew Tate documentary on Vice, and that was my first introduction to him. I've actually never even heard him speak before that. And he kept bringing up historical figures and like idolizing them. And on one hand, that like warmed my heart, right? Because I do the exact same thing. But he had such like a misunderstanding about a lot of these people, even people like Genghis Khan and stuff. And it actually lends itself exactly to what you were saying, Scott, that like a lot of times like these people that he like looks up to, he sees that like their masculinity as as this amazing thing in and of itself, rather than a means to an end that those people were trying to use for for something meaningful, to establish something meaningful. And it's just such a shallow way at looking at masculinity in general.
Right, it's like you're gonna look at Genghis Khan because he's so amazing because he conquered so much, right? But like, are you gonna talk about Kublai Khan? Like, are you gonna talk about a more like an empire
just like, why did
that is
Genghis do what he did? What was his origin story, and like who was
Right.
he trying to protect? Like there's a lot of complexities there, and it's like it's very frustrating to just see it. And then he wags around like this sword that looked so fake. I don't know if you saw that, but it was just absolutely wild, and it kind of just made me sad because I know Jordan Peterson said he said plenty of dumb things, as most people do online, but he was so much of a better voice for a lot of men, and he got treated so terribly by so many people, and he's being replaced, right, as like the online daddy for these guys, and by someone that is so much worse.
Yeah, being
Andrew
replaced
Tate's
by
a
more
horrible
extreme
piece of shit.
people.
Yeah, I mean, like,
By
but
more
I mean, I
extreme
think
and more shallow
It
people
went from like
who aren't
clean
nearly
your
as
room
thoughtful.
to oppress like and sexually traffic women.
Yeah, traffic. From
Right?
clean your room to traffic women.
Yeah, right.
Clean your room to
you know what I mean?
trafficking
Like,
women pipeline.
the pipeline is like become a stronger, better man by like cleaning your environment. And once you have that strength, traffic women. But like, no, what you
It's
said,
ain't easy.
you know, what you said about the prescriptive thing. The one thing I wanted to like point out just a little bit is, in kind of Eris, you touched on this as well, is that what it seems like is when you like there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics, right? And so it is very true that many in the red pill community adequately identify, statistics and prescriptive reality in a way that we're like almost ostracized for mentioning, right?
True.
And then
True.
but the problem is that there's a value to, and it's like any consequentialist, right? There's a value to what it is that you choose to order over something else, right? Like there are other things that they will ignore. So like one example, right, that I can give is like you'll hear the red pill community often talk about like women find 80, and I've mentioned this stats before. Women find 80% of men unattractive physically. So if women were to rate men on a 1 to 10 scale, right, they would say that 80% of men are a 5 or below, right? And it's only the top 20% that they'll even say are above, like are average or above average looking, right? So if you're an 8 and you're a guy, right, like you're in the top 20% of attractiveness, most girls will assume that you're an average looking guy and that you're not really attractive or unattractive. Whereas men, it's a pretty standard distribution, right? And so the thing is that women also tend to overvalue their attractiveness, right? The average way that women value themselves is a 7, right? So if you're a 5 as a woman, you believe if you got an 8 as a man that you've settled and that he's not as worth as much as you in terms of attractiveness, despite the fact that you're fucking mid and he's an 8, right? Like you should be happy to be with this guy. But for the most part, and this, like, obviously there are outliers or people that don't exist, right? And so they'll talk about like this world where like Chad men on dating apps are getting all of the women. And it's like, that's true too. But what they don't look at in terms of the data is that Chad men, right, send out more messages than non-Chad men, right? They actually are more actively seeking women on online dating sites than other men because they're incentivized to do so, because sometimes it actually works for them, whereas like for most guys it doesn't. And on top of this, even still, men, right, that are on these dating websites, even the Chad guys that actually do get dates and stuff, they send out a ton of messages that are unanswered. Like the overwhelming majority of like their messages and attempts to get girls are still struck down. And on top of that, when you look at less attractive women, they're in the same boat as fucking as the less attractive men. They send out a ton of messages proactively and they get no response. And so we have this idea that like, oh, 80% of men are left in the dust and it's only these Chad, and they live in this world where like they just get approached with attention whenever they want, when really it's like, no, the type of dude that's in shape and works hard and has a good job is also the type of person that puts in effort to fucking trying to seek and get women. And the unattractive women are in the same fucking boat as the you know, the femcells, if you will, are in the same boat as the incels, where they're putting out a ton of information trying to get attention and they get none. And so it's like they'll pick what data they want and then ignore the rest and then base prescriptions off of half a picture.
They have the problem of both cherry picking data, the things that they want to focus on, which you need a more holistic picture than that, as well as having a selection bias in the women that they talk to and ask for information from and get onto these shows and such, etc. So you have there's so much bias across the board with that. Like I often see it as like people are often like measuring a lot of the wrong things, and a lot of this comes from online culture, right? A lot of this comes from how they're infusing themselves with information about who is successful, what is success, who should I be looking for, and they're getting this very curated glimpse into the world that is also very selection bias oriented, right? And it's unrealistic. And it kind of like, this is where you have both things having a problem. You have the dating world having been moved to online and everything being about, oh, look, I can just search for the cream of the crop and swipe, left on all these people who don't fit my, top notch, top 95th percentile parameters that I'm looking for. Right.
Right.
And then also like people's view into what is successful and what to look for and go after is also highly selection bias and cherry picked and skewed, and so it's creating a lot of fiction based on some observable facts and descriptive facts, but culminating in a total fiction in the end. And so
Casimir points out something really important too, is the selection mechanism for the people that use those apps in the first place, especially the women. Right? So like a lot of data that we get on like dating apps.
I have never used it once.
Right.
Ever.
Like,
and it's mostly men on them.
Yeah. But even still, it's like the women that are on it are clearly on it because, they're not engaged in some type of community where they're seeking men that have shared values. They're into hookup culture, at least to some degree. right? So you're already looking at numbers and data and and things from a selection bias that is looking for women that are trying to find men, trying to find sugar daddies, or trying to find people just to have sex with, right? At a much higher degree than you would, let's say, I don't know, at your local church. Like, there's a very different type of person, and they're not captured in a lot of that data.
I think a lot of people need to like change what they're looking for in terms of like what makes for a good partner. Like, really, they should be looking for like who can quote the most lines from their favorite anime, or who has the best kill death ratio on COD, or like, you know, what does their Factorio factory look like how efficient is it, and what level is it at, how automated is it, are you still going and manually collecting ores? I'm sorry, but you don't pass.
I went in here thinking I wasn't going to do that bad in the dating market, but after this, like, I don't have any of those things.
Well, it's like what Jake says, women are attracted to competence, right? And you can just be very competent at video games. So I think like I don't know. I also
pretty sure if a dude came up to you and was like, "I'm really competent. I've got I'm a grand master in League of Legends," you'd be like, I've never felt.
You know what? Drive. If I was playing League of Legends, yeah, I would probably be attracted to the guy who's like known as one of the best. Like, that's for sure. Like, it's just like a female instinct. I think that's in general, there is something that's lost when you're just doing it in the apps, especially just like swiping between people, because that's just not how like humans have historically mated and found one another attractive. Like, there's other factors that just that come up just naturally when you meet someone, and that stuff is just lost a bit. I was gonna tell a story from Sex and the City, you know, but fine. You know,
go ahead.
Fine. Tell your story about your friend.
Tell your fictional story. I got a real one. Go ahead.
No, I'm not. I forgot what I was saying. It's okay.
You forgot? Oh my God, I feel bad. I had a friend that you know, was in the dating apps and, you know, having a lot of problems with, like, you know, just meeting like girls that he was just hooking up with, but like wasn't like having anything substantive. And like, he's really into like a lot of like he's just really into physical things, right? Like, he likes to go hiking, he likes boating, right? Like, he likes, you know,
the way you said that was just really interesting.
Or something.
No. I just mean, like, he's a very active person. Like, he's the type of person that, like, if you give him a skateboard and for whatever reason he's into skateboarding that week, like, he'll just become a good skateboarder and be doing crazy shit, right? Like, that's just how he chooses to spend his time when he's not working, is like just doing a lot of kinesthetic activities, right? And I was like, well, dude, you're on dating apps. Like, if you want to meet a girl that like is going to be in a relationship with you, then fucking spend some money and go to like a rock climbing studio and like talk to girls at the rock climbing studio. Like, going on dating apps and trying to find a girl that has pictures of her hiking and yoga pants is like, I'm really into working out. You're just going to find whores. Like, no offense. I know it's a strong language, right? But you're just going to, like, that's not what you should be selecting for. Like, go do the things you love with other people and find people that love the things you love.
I also think just being a part of like a friend group and you're just more likely in my friend groups in real life, you will see the most unattractive men with the most beautiful women, right? Because they just like, because
they have
that's
money.
just
Got
they.
it.
No, honestly, like a lot of times they don't, and I don't think those women would have picked them on dating apps, but they're completely enamored with them in person, because because they just got charmed by the person and they just had chemistry, and maybe that guy had good social status within the group. Like, there's lots of other factors that you just don't consider
for sure,
like on like an app.
For sure. I will say this though,
and it does objectify men 100%.
If you go to a D&D or like comic book shop that does it, you will notice that there's a distinct difference between the D&D guys and their lack of girlfriends, or in the attractiveness of their girlfriends, versus the 40K guys, right? And they're the same level of nerdy, right? But there's a reason the 40K guys are playing 40K, which means they have 40K? The money. Warhammer. Like, there's a reason that those guys got the bitches, and it's because they got the money. If you got money to afford Warhammer like armies, like you're in a higher status place in life, and they definitely have more attractive girlfriends that are there. I'm just saying.
You're not basing this off the one comic shop we went to up in New York,
I used to go all the time.
Fair enough.
But I 3D print my armies. Yeah, but that's a different level of competence, right? I do think it's important to note that like competence isn't singular, right? If somebody becomes hyper competent in one avenue, it tends to lead towards, or at the very least correlate with competence in other areas, right? And so I do think sometimes weird niche competence can be attractive because it proves competence in general, right?
Did you just say
would you
niche?
agree? Niche, whatever.
Why do
fuck
Americans
off.
say niche?
I say niche.
Yeah, it's niche.
It's only Scott.
Okay, it's only Scott.
Look, I'm actually so severely ADHD that like my words get ahead of me.
Oh
and
my god, I was
sometimes
being
just say
ableist.
them.
I'm so sorry. Please don't cancel me.
I don't give a fuck. I mean, it's true. Like I mix up words or like I say things incorrectly all the time. It's not because I don't know how to say it. It's because my brain is like moving faster than my mouth, or vice versa.
I'm dyslexic, but we're also pro ableism on my channel, so it's okay. Like what you were saying, Scott, like competency is another thing that a lot of women look for in men. So being highly competent in something, for instance, Soyadal saying that he 3D prints his armies, that would be a competence thing. That's something that can be impressive. Girls also like to see a guy who's like really, really interested in things and like really kind of knows their shiz when it comes to something, like being invested in it, having a passion for it, having all sorts of different projects around it, etc. And so they like to hear a guy talk about those things and talk about their interest in that. And that shows like there's like a motivating, there's some motivational force going on there, and
Depends
a reason
on the topic.
If it's Star Wars, yeah, probably not.
Star Wars is fine.
Yo, fuck you guys. I used to be super into Star Wars.
I had a Star Wars cake for my 14th birthday.
Nice.
That's
I was
adorable.
into Star Wars too, but became a little bit more of a Star Trek nerd.
That's the natural progression as
Fucking
you grow up.
communist. Fucking commie piece of shit.
I also
Fucking-
later
You
on,
like- so
and later
Star Wars
on, I
is all
got
about
huge into Doctor Who.
anti-imperialism.
Later on, I got
Yes.
big into Doctor Who, so that became the thing that replaced both of them for me. Well, not really
And
replaced.
all
but-
three franchises have been ruined. We all have a nostalgia for when it used to be good.
But yeah, like overall, like having a passion for something and really investing energy in it and becoming knowledgeable of it is definitely something that it gets noticed, and it becomes a thing in its of an attraction in a way. But yeah, like Eris is right. At a certain point, then you can be like, okay, I've heard way too much about Star Wars. If I hear another fucking thing about Star Wars, I'm gonna break up with this retard, right? So, it's there are limits, and you got to be able to also engage socially and have a conversation that is not exclusively based on your own interests. You got to also recognize the interests in the girl and have some kind of a conversation with that.
Hey,
which I
thanks,
think a lot of
Suarez.
guys don't get a lot of that social grounding.
I appreciate it. I do.
Unfortunately.
Well, I think, this is one of the things that I think is somewhat good about the Red Pill community, right? Is that they do preach self-improvement, which is like super important, right? Like it is, there is a lot of that in from most of them. Is like, you want to do better in life, like you need to get off the fucking couch. You need to start working out. You need a healthier diet. You need to focus on your career. And it's great advice. Like it like, and
Yeah,
and
but it's
advice,
also, it's shallow. It's shallow advice because the type of girl who's only going to be attracted to, like, are those things attractive? Sure. But they're the shallow things that are on the outside. Like I just don't understand, like, why, what kind of woman is going to be attracted to a guy who has all those things but is a terrible human being? There are women who will be, right? But they're going to be terrible human beings,
But,
right?
I mean-
and like
but I mean-
themselves.
I see it
But
as
if
like
you're-
a starting point.
yeah,
it's like
like
getting
if you're a
up and getting.
Slavic loser, like you're not attracted to the mate you want, period.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
and
can
it-
just tell you that most of those guys, especially the ones that I saw in the documentary, it doesn't matter how rich, how good looking, how anything they are, I would never. I would rather die a nun.
It, like, I
Because
would say one
they
of the
don't
big
exude like anything special about them. And it's just, and the type of women they're going to attract are women who give zero fucks about that.
Yeah, but
and I would say that it's like the big problem with the red pill advice is that it stops at that. It's like, okay, you need to get up, you need to improve yourself in this way, and this way, and then boom, it kind of stops. And it's kind of like, well, okay, there's more than just that. Sure, good idea to get active, get physically moving, get your blood pumping, improve your physical health, improve your physical situation. That's good advice overall, but you can't just stop it there and say, boom, therefore chicks. You actually need to go and go farther and say, okay, what are you doing to improve yourself in terms of how it is that you engage with other people, how you socialize, the way that you view other people, the way that you initiate conversation. How do you understand the other person? Or is this just about feeding the self and the ego? Well, that's not going to get you very far. At best, you're going to get, as Eris put, shallow people who are only looking for those surface aesthetics.
Yeah,
So-
I actually disagree, right? I would say that first point, getting healthier means getting happier, and also means being more confident. And it also means engaging in an exercise that is very important to masculinity, which is, challenging and strengthening your willpower, right? Like having the will to be able to do those things. And on top of that, and I would also say that a lot of like red pillars and people like that, they're very focused on like intellectual growth as well, right? Now some of the more popular ones that sell rage bait, like Fresh and Fit, right? Like they're there because of the monetization power of negativity. It's the same thing with Vosh, right? Vosh is not famous because he has good ideas, right? Vosh is not famous because he's an intellectual. Vosh is famous because he triggers rightoids and pisses them off and then gets pushed forward in the algorithm, right? He's not famous because he's a smart person, right? Like Slavoj Zizek, right, is somebody that's famous because of like good ideas. Even if, I hate commies, so obviously I'm not a big fan, right? But he's famous because of interesting ideas, right? Someone like Vosh isn't, and it's the same thing with like Fresh and Fit. But I think if you go into like the smaller communities that are part of the larger red pill community, right, you'll see reading lists, as Casimir pointed out, but you'll see like people that are like, it's the self-improvement isn't simply just that. And I think this is kind of a healthy thing, but also, again, if you're fat and you're lazy and you're not doing anything about your career and your life and you're not building a life, right? Like that comes with consequences beyond just the ego, like you said, the narcissism. It also comes with the fact that you probably don't read much. You probably don't think much. You're probably keyed into video games. And in an exercise in willpower and growth in any domain, just like I said, competence in one domain kind of transfers to others.
Yeah,
is
of
probably
course it
true all
connects.
around.
We know that being very overweight actually affects you cognitively. So, so like of course,
Can
like
make
it
you
all connects.
depressed.
I
Sure.
think the physical stuff and I think that stuff on the outside is incredibly important. It's just you want to improve like in a whole way, an entire like a whole way, right? And it's I don't know, the stuff that I see that's getting pushed out there, it just seems so vile. And especially like you have no religion that's teaching like genuine morality or like philosophy or anything anymore to like these young people, and it's just I don't know, it's very scary to me.
I think what I've noticed, right, the more, and I think we all know this, right, but I think I've noticed it has a larger effect than we tend to assume, right? And that is that in almost every online space, there's a large tent, and there are pipelines in that tent towards other areas. And what ends up happening is everyone that's not in the tent, right, they only see the large content creators or the most controversial figures in that tent. And so what ends up happening is we're very biased by what we see, by what's most popular. And what social media and the internet have done is kind of like I just described. They've monetized hate. They've monetized triggering. They've monetized engagement, because the people that are controversial don't just get engagement from inside the tent. They get engagement from outside of the tent because of the hate. And so, like, when we're talking about the red pill community, just as one example, we tend to talk about the really popular people that are what I described, right? Second stage masculinity. It's not integrated. They're not working on the good things. And yet, if you really delve into that community, you'll find a lot of those people predominantly are talking about virtue ethics. And a lot of those people are like, you've got to read Marcus Aurelius, right? Like it's a very common thing that a lot of people in the red pill community are very interested in virtue ethics as a form of morality and self-improvement. And not my particular philosophy that I would choose, right? But it is a thing. And yet when we sit on the outside, we see the Tates, we see the Fresh and Fit, we see the dude bro podcast with the face tattooed guy that's getting into fights and shit, because that's what drives clicks and hate from the other side. And that's what gets amplified by people that disagree with the red pill community to their own community. And it blows up and gets so much bigger because controversy sells. And then and that biases the way.
So the
that
internet
we
is
look at
as a mistake, basically.
It's more
Return
the
to
it's more the
Return to Monka
algorithms.
S.
It's more like the algorithms, and I've often said this as well. I call it the screeching minority. Like, that's who we hear from. It's the controversial people, the outliers, the people who are outrageous, the people who are crazy and unhinged, the people with the bad ideas, the crazy ideas. Like, that's what gets sort of the traction, because that's the thing that gets people to pay attention and go, oh my God, I can't believe this. Reshare, quote, tweet, blah blah blah, make a response piece on it, etc. And that fuels the engagement. It's the outrage, the sensationalism that is the engaging thing, and the algorithms are sort of built around boosting that thing that boils people's blood. The thing that boils your blood, that's the thing that's going to get recommended. And so there's so much around signal boosting the crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so you're getting this, like, with a lot of people who are like freaking out about like all these things. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is so popular. It's like, well, no, it's a unhinged person or a weird person or a person with bad ideas who put their crazy, unhinged or weird or bad ideas out there.
Look
and
at
people
Libs at
reacted to it. Yeah.
Look at Libs
like
at
that.
TikTok, right? It's like, I have extreme hatred for groomers, right? I have an extreme hatred for social emotional learning in 34% of all elementary schools. I think it's Marxist indoctrination of our children. And I don't just think that, I know it as a fact. 1/3 of all elementary students are being indoctrinated into Marxist philosophy. Fight me. I don't give a fuck. I'll pick a moderator. But that's not the same thing as like the blue-haired deer person, right? That is like, and then they're like, look what's going on in our schools. Whereas like a majority of it is not the blue-haired deer person, right? That's like saying wild shit, right? Like that's the excesses of a country of 330 million people. And they're the worst examples of what's happening in our schools. But they're the most popular. They get the most traction. And they present an idea that like actually almost obfuscates the problem as I see it, right? But that is what it is within our own community, the liberty movement.
It's like a red herring draws all the attention over here, right?
Right. Within our own community, the liberty movement on Twitter, right? There's this chick, that liberty chick, right? The liberty chick, a couple months ago, nobody knew who the fuck she was, right? She was some gym girl that like posts yoga videos of her doing squats on Instagram that had like 18,000 followers on Instagram, right?
Is this
She comes
why you're
onto
a
Twitter.
misogynist now?
Fucking always was a misogynist, all right? But like, no, kidding. But like, she comes forward and within
I
like,
should have
a
giga
couple
chatted through
weeks-
that one instead of saying kidding.
Man, like I said, I tend to be honest. I'll say the wild shit that I actually believe. Like, if I want to say get on some misogynistic takes, don't get me started on nurses in tight scrubs. I'll do a half hour on slut pajamas. But like I don't fucking like that shit. But what I'm saying is like she came out of nowhere, right? She has no idea what libertarianism is. She specifically states that her primary goal is to prove that vaccines cause autism, and she's 50-50 on whether or not we're flat Earth, right? And she just comes in, starts screaming and tweeting over and over and over again, demanding attention, adding LP, being like, why don't you like women? Why are you pushing women out of the movement, etc.? Gets positive subtweets from Maj Touré, Angela McArdle, the head of the LP, Spike Cohen, the last presidential run's VP candidate. All these different people start being like, yeah, right? And she's like got like 7,000 followers on Twitter, like almost like out of nowhere. Screaming, being a loud person that says all kinds of shit that's anti-libertarian. Has no idea what the fuck she's talking about. And just now, people in the liberty movement are starting to notice that she's a problem, right? But if I wasn't in the liberty movement and I was outside of it, I would literally just look at it and be like, look at this popular, crazy libertarian. Look at how stupid libertarians are. And I'd have no concept of like the inner struggle of what's going on, because I'm sitting on the outside and she's the one screaming the loudest, saying the craziest shit.
That's exactly why it's just a good idea to meet people that have different views than you and stuff. Like, just for yourself, it's so easy to strawman them and to automatically look down at them for having different views. But
for sure,
like,
I mean,
you and I have
I'm
had
friends
this
with so many
conversation.
conservatives.
It's so strange because I think you and I probably have more opposite views in some ways than you do with like lefties, right? Because I can be so authoritarian and stuff, and but I also completely and it would be so easy to just write off, from my perspective, because obviously I'm correct, to write off your ideas as being ridiculous. But I meet you and I hear about your experiences and why you have the opinions the way you do. It's like, it turns out it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, that's why I occasionally talk to Corey Campbell, because he's just a full-blown fucking commie little fucker.
Who's Corey
right?
Campbell? You keep bringing this
Corey
person.
Campbell. I love Corey Campbell. He's on Primecast Reverie occasionally. He's a small streamer. He's Canadian. He's a vegan, hardcore socialist, and he's a PhD candidate in biochemistry. And he does a lot of science streams and workout streams. And he's a tiny little woke, jacked little fucker. But I can talk with him, and he gives me a perspective on like what the other side is thinking and how they view things sometimes. And then sometimes I get too mad and I'm like, it's time for the helicopter. But you know what I mean? It is what it is.
I don't think Corey is like some.
It's 84, not 94.
I don't think he's like a commie, dude. I think Corey's he's fairly left wing, but I think he's more like I don't know. I don't know exactly what his politics are, but he doesn't strike me as being a commie.
No. You're all fucking commies as far as I'm concerned, damn near, because you're all socialists. But even when you think you're not, I call Republicans socialists because they fucking are.
Wait, what do you call an authoritarian socialist? Oh no.
Well, I think authoritarian socialist is a kind of a I don't understand why you're repeating it. Like, it's redundant. To be a socialist is to be an authoritarian.
Making a joke about Nazis, gosh.
yeah, but like, there's no difference. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. Like, the Nazis were socialists, so are these other socialists. It's all the same shit. Different cultural values in the way that they choose to be authoritarian. Cool. But I like Corey as a person.
Yeah.
Like, I like to hang out with him.
Corey. I like Corey. He's fun to be on panels with too.
Well, I wish he was a little feistier. I wish he was a little more punchy.
So I'm gonna hop off. But it was nice chatting. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't know how long this was gonna go, but it's like
good hanging
almost
out with you
11:30.
again, Eris.
Yeah.
I'll
Love
catch
to
up
see
with
you
you
around.
in
I'm on an old person times right now, so.
Yeah, well, no, I think you were right to not do like big panels and just be like, look, I'll come on your show for like a one-on-one or like a small thing. That's the way to go, because the conversations are better.
Yeah,
I get
agree.
so I'm also like I'm just not very assertive in like a large group, so I just won't get chances to talk, and then my insecurity like comes in. I feel like the host doesn't want me to talk, and I'm like taking up the space in the room, and it's just better if I just don't do it. So yeah, I definitely.
Before you leave, Casimir pointed out, I decided to check out the archive of SIG, Self-Improvement General, from 4chan. The top thread is a list of books.
What's
Number
on that
one
list,
most
though?
valued
What's
thing.
on that list? Because there's a lot of pseudo-intellectual shit you can put on there.
You know what I just finished?
Genetics.
You know what I just finished that you gotta check out? You gotta check out The Vampire Economy. Have you read it, Eris?
Is that by that Mark dude? What was his name?
His name's like he's got a long. It's a communist.
Sorry.
Communist economist in 1939 writing about the economy of Nazism, the economics of Nazism. It's amazing.
I've been reading the very intellectual novel written by Prince Harry.
He said, "Pull it up. Promise there's no swastikas."
Swastika.
Can confirm.
It's The Millionaire Next Door, The Book of Puck. I don't even know that one. Models by Mark Manson. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. No More Mr. Nice Guy. The Art of War. Total Recall. The Way of Men.
I was gonna say, I hope the Art of War is there. You know.
Yeah, the Art of
Eastern
War is
philosophy.
there. There you go.
I've actually been
And,
reading a lot of
while
Eastern
we're at
philosophy
it
lately.
Well, since we're talking about it, boys, if you can get us to 200 subs, we do indeed have a hard book copy of The Art of War, The Way of the Samurai, and The Book of Five Rings that we will mail out to someone. All right? But you got to get us to 200 subs.
Well, thank you for
Just
having
throwing
me.
that out there.
Yeah,
Of course.
Good as always. Okay.
Gunter
nice seeing you
Ryman. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
guys.
Good hanging out with
see
you
guys.
again. See ya.
Always a pleasure.
Nice having you. All right, so what are we gonna do? Yell about chasers now, or are we gonna
We already did some of the chaser talk. Like, what do we have left to talk about with chasers?
Kidding. I don't know that. I think we agree so much that I don't know that there's a lot. That I thought we might have more back and forth on it, but apparently, like, I think we're basically in the same place. Political perspective a little different.
Yeah, I think you and I share some like a lot of like live and let live, and kind of view of things in a way. So we're probably going to agree on certain things like that. But yeah, overall, and I think you and I both also recognize that sexual attractions, they're not really something you can reason somebody out of. You'd be like, you're not allowed to be attracted to this thing that you're attracted to. And it's like, that doesn't actually work. And so
I think something I forgot to mention, and this isn't like just like jumping back into it, but just I think something that really people have to recognize is a lot of people don't understand the way male sexuality is different from female sexuality, right? And so male sexuality is characterized far more often by imprinting, right? Like, you know what imprinting is, right? Sexual imprinting. Yeah, and so it was really interesting the way they discovered sexual imprinting. Studying it, they discovered. Do you know like the original study on it?
Well, I know that Jeffrey Dahmer was part of the study. So
Okay,
in like
that's
probably not the original study, but I know that there was like an analysis of like why it was that Jeffrey Dahmer was attracted to what he was. And at the time when he was going through like raging hormones and he was home alone, his mom had left the home, his father hadn't been or didn't even live there anymore. And so he was alone for a few months in the home. He had a guy over, and he got pissed off at the guy who refused to work out with him more or something like that. He freaked out, hit the guy in the head with like a barbell or something, and at the time was experiencing also, like as a lot of young men do, 14-year-olds, random firings of arousal, and the two kind of happened at the same time. And that was sort of a theory as to why it was that actually became a sexually linked behavior with him.
Didn't he also stare at that jogger too? He'd sit in a bush and like just watch this dude jog by.
So my knowledge of serial killers is so much more limited than Mark's.
So it was like, and that was something that was used because they wanted to talk about, why is it that serial killers have this a sexual link and they prey on people in a certain way, and they had interviewed several serial killers and several rapists as well, and they all shared similar events in their lives that happened at the time that they have random arousal moments as they're developing through puberty.
Yeah, I mean, so the original study was they took a bunch of goats and sheep, right? And they mixed up the male goats and put some of them with sheep and some of them with some of the sheep with goats, and they separated them like from throughout their entire development, right? And then what they found was when they put them back, they would not have sex with their own species. Right? They would only have sex with the species that they had been around, right? Like they couldn't get even when a female was like, what is it?
Boy, did they fuck those goats up.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? These poor goats, right? These poor billy goats, right? And so it is an interesting thing, right? Is this idea that like, paraphilic disorders, right, as opposed to fetishes, right? Like we recognize that there are certain sexual disorders that, are problematic, right? Be it, obviously pedophilia being kind of the big one everybody knows about, but like, bug chasing was another example Mark brought up, right? Like there are certain disorders that are like clearly harm you, but for the most part, most sexual imprinting isn't that harmful. And what's interesting to me is the fluidity of female sexuality. And so I wonder if some of this like chaser thing, right, is because of, obviously there's like the left and the trans rights and things like that. They tend to be more focused on the problematizing men, right, as opposed to women. And I wonder if it's because it's so much more popular amongst the men going after, AMAB people or trans, individuals that identify as women, if like that plays a role in it, right? That it is a predominantly a male thing that's occurring because there is that's just where fetishism tends to be more common.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure about that one particularly, but it does seem to be a male dominant thing. Like you don't find as many women who are sexually attracted to trans women, as far as I know, or trans
men. Yeah.
I have on sort of two, but mostly one occasion. I mean, there was one in particular where there was a woman who was extremely attracted to the idea of that, me being a trans woman, and she confided in me that it was a sexual attraction, that it was like she found trans women to be very hot. There's another person I also met, also a woman, cis women both, who said that she was attracted to trans women, but for her it wasn't like she's sexually attracted to trans women. It was more just like she prefers trans women as company, and but it wasn't like as much a sexual attraction. So that's why I say it's kind of two, but like one in particular was like a strong sexual attraction. Like she was aroused by the fact that I was trans.
You would think it would be so much more, right? You would think it would be so much more common that women would be attracted to trans men, right, than men being attracted to trans men. And the way I say, and the reason I say that is because, number one, with sorry for my crassness, but like the biddies match, right? Like you know what I mean? Like the actual act of sexual intercourse is going to be similar, right? Like it's going to be like, we're not talking about secondary sexual characteristics here, but primary sexual characteristics, assuming we're talking about pre-op individuals, right? And so like, and then the second one is that you have someone that is biologically male but has experienced things that men can't, I won't say can't understand, but don't have that experience of, right? Like I have never lived in a world where the world viewed me as a woman, right? And so in terms of like the attractiveness of the empathy, like you would almost think that women would be more likely to chase, because you're talking about a sexual experience from someone relationship wise that like maybe understands things that another man wouldn't be able to understand.
Well, we also know that the majority of trans women are straight and the majority of trans men are straight, meaning that the majority of trans women prefer to date men and the majority of trans men prefer to date women. So that's another thing that that's a pretty consistent metric so far. Now that's
so maybe we don't notice it as much
but
because it's immediately rebuffed kind of thing.
could be. Yeah.
Right.
So another thing I've also heard, and it makes sense, trans women suck the best dick and trans men eat the best pussy.
I don't buy that for a second. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that for a second. No.
It's sort of it's a meme, but it's one of those things you hear in the community.
No. That's fucking cope from a bunch of AGP people. All right, like, fuck out of here. Fucking no, that's fucking cope. All right, there's no way.
Yeah, but there's going to be little like colloquial sayings in the community and such. Yeah, I don't know. It's overall, like, I allow people their attractions, and as you mentioned, there are like certain ones that we all can pretty much agree are harmful. Sexual attraction to like characteristics of men and women and trans people, not really harmful. So these are things that we can allow for. And like the one problem that I find like on the internet in particular is like they're very prolific. The chasers that are on the internet are very prolific, and they're in like all the trans communities. You'll see them and they'll be in all the trans communities, and they're constantly like saying sexual things about all the different trans women and asking for certain things and asking for feet pics and stuff like that. And it's like you just notice them a lot because they're very persistent. They're in all the communities, they're in all the trans streamers chats and everything, and you're like, a little excessive.
I mean like that's the part. I mean, but that's like, I don't know. That's interesting, right? Like,
is that a problem just with access, maybe?
I mean, if everyone's if it's an open community,
ease of access,
right? Like, if it's an open community, obviously that's where they're going to go, right? But it is interesting though that like you create presumably a safe space, right? Like assuming it's not counting fucking any ranch Discord server. You create presumably a safe space, and then that occurs in there. I don't know. I've spoken to a lot of trans and detrans people, especially behind the scenes, not live, and they don't seem to want to talk about it, especially detrans people, about the over sexualization and predatory behavior that occurs in a lot of online trans spaces. And it's not just the chasers, right? It's the how do I put it? The people that are looking for eggs, like the people. There's
egg cracking and pink pilling.
Yeah, I've heard that there's just a lot of that in general in those spaces because, and I don't know what the right answer to that is. Fuck if I know. Like I'm kind of on the outside looking in, here, but like I don't know that that's necessarily fully just the chasers coming in and infiltrating a space, but maybe a space that is already hypersexual and with lacking of boundaries in general.
There's some truth to that. There's a reason why I don't spend much time in trans specific communities, because they do tend to be a little overly sexualized, and I'm a prude, so there's not really a place for me there. I just, I feel like I can't engage oftentimes, or there's just too much sexualization. So not only that, it opens myself up to like the chasers that are there looking for that thing, because they kind of assume in a sexualized environment that obviously the people who are there are open to it. Yeah, receptive to it. So yeah, I tend to not spend much time in those environments. I'll go in, hang out here and there every once in a while, but I really don't make much of a presence there. But yeah, there is some truth to that. It's a horny lot, that's for certain.
I don't know. This is on dangerous categories, so I'm trying to be careful TOS wise, right? But I mean, like, I do really wonder if there is much more to the sexual fetish aspect of the trans people themselves. And
you mean like AGP stuff?
Yeah, but it seems to be that it's like, I don't want to say like an open secret, right? But it seems to be like, it's like nobody wants to talk about it because it places, it seems like there's this circling together of trans people that already feel like conservatives are looking for any reason to hate them. And so they'd rather not talk about something that like is, I don't want to say dangerous, but like negative, because they're worried about any negative attention towards their perceived in-group community. And it almost seems like they're worse at calling out predators because of this, because they're not open to, like, there's almost like a code of silence and being like, oh, that just happens, it's a joke, and like no one really wants to talk about it, because if they're open about it, then it's almost like they're inviting scrutiny onto the places that they want to be safe in.
I'm not so sure about that as like a broader thing. Hard to say. It's something I got to think about a lot more and kind of process and come up with, like, how is it that I view it and what have I seen? I did get into a fight with a trans member of of the broader community over a similar kind of topic about, like, why are we afraid to scrutinize certain behaviors in our community just because we fear that it plays into a conservative narrative. We shouldn't, how it is that we regulate or address problem behaviors shouldn't be gated on whether or not it gives fuel to conservative narratives or haters' narratives about us. We should all, feel like a similar, moral motivation to address certain things, regardless of that. And so it's something I've had a conversation with some people about, but I'm not sure how much of an issue that is. I know there are certain taboo subjects that just will not be touched. And like, if you try to touch it, you're accused of like being a pick-me or selling us out to the enemy, etc. So some of those things can veer a little close to certain topics where it's like, we should be talking about this and we should be addressing this. I don't know. It's something I've got to think about a lot more and think about how it is I want to address it. Part of the reason why I get accused of being a pick-me is because I don't care about whether or not other trans people like me. I'll say what I think needs to be said. I have my own code of ethics and morals and my own standards, and I don't give a fuck what your marginalized status is. I hold everybody to it. I don't have double standards for it, and that pisses some people off and gets me into a lot of trouble.
I know it?
Because I just don't give a fuck. Yeah. And people think they're gonna shame me out of saying something, and I'm like, you know what I say to that? Middle fucking finger. Fuck off, retards. So I'll say what I have to say regardless of the backlash. By the way, I have an individual in my chat who is asking to hop on to this VC and have a chat. He has some things to say about this subject. His name is Black Yamato.
Oh yeah,
not sure if you're
around.
familiar with him.
Oh yeah, I've spoken with Black Yamato before. Yeah, just have him hop in.
Hop on over there into his Discord. Head over, if you don't have his link, head over to his Twitch chat and do !Discord or whatever you got.
Yeah, I mean, I linked it there if you want to link it in your chat. If you're in mine, I don't know.
I think what a lot of people...
You said Black Yamato, his? You said him? I thought Black Yamato's pronouns were she, her. Am I wrong?
They're he, him.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Look at that.
I remember
Scott trying to crack his egg.
What? I'm not trying to... No.
While he heads over there, I'm going to go use the restroom. Do a little bio.
Me too. I will be right back.
All right, then.
I've been holding it for a minute, and I was like, all right, fuck it. If you're going, I'm going. We'll be right back, boys.
All right.
Oh, well, this is awkward. I know. It was great. I didn't hardly have to talk at all, and now I'm the center of attention, my least favorite thing to be. Well, I'm just gonna hang out with my chat. Or not, I don't know. Scott's usually pretty quick. Which is kind of terrifying when he comes charging out of the hallway. I will be nice, Soyana. I will say yes, Scott does wash his hands. But the real answer is, I don't know, because I have headphones on too, and I can't hear the sink. Let's see. We love you, Mark. I appreciate that. I needed that confidence boost tonight. Should I go ahead and bring Yamato on? I'm scared to, being all alone here. Oh, yeah, you do wash your hands behind me. I just never pay attention. Okay, so yeah, he definitely does wash his hands. My bad. The other answer was way funnier, though. You have to admit, Scott. What does Absent Gold do?
You never watched an Asmongold stream? Like, whenever he comes back from the bathroom, he's like, he'll just be like, I'll wash my hands because I got a clean dick. Like, that's what he usually says. You never seen that?
Gross.
Hey, what's up, Black Yamato?
Hey,
Zone, you'll be back in just a second. Yeah.
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
I haven't talked to you since the Stardust stream that we were on.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of an impromptu late night wild stream.
Yeah, it was funny as fuck. How you guys doing tonight?
Well, it's just me right now. Zonia's still using the restroom, and Mark hopped off. Wellspring, damn! I thought it would be female, but whelp. Jesus Christ, people! What is it? Oh no,
yeah,
it's another dude. Oh.
Yeah, I'm a male. Okay, I may have like a female photo, but like I am very prominent, like just male, like just a dude.
Yeah, that's the most nerdy male thing you can possibly do, which is have a female anime profile.
I'm sorry, I'm a weeb, okay?
Yeah, it's just like that's a very neck beardy thing, right? Is having an anime profile.
Okay, now you're making assumptions. All right, now you're making assumptions. Okay, I'm not a neck beard yet.
It's all right. I usually go a day or two without shaving the neck.
True.
All right, so we're all back. What did you want to say?
So I think it's pretty harmful to have, I guess, chasers in someone's spaces. But I think we get in too many conflicts, or there is a conflict that happens where you have like the one guy who finds like a trans person like attractive, and then they hyper focus and use the word chaser because they want to stomp out that type of shit immediately. I wasn't here for like too many of it. Yeah. So I don't know everyone's consensus of it, but I do think like it's okay to be hyper vigilant, but like not everybody who thinks that, or not every dude who thinks a trans chick is attractive is a chaser, and people get labeled that like way too much.
Like Yamato has a little bit of experience with being falsely labeled as a chaser.
Yeah, you have.
I know. It started out as a joke, and it went too far, and unfortunately,
the thing that I say,
got a lot of shit for it.
The thing that I would say is that, like, you know, the problem is that chaser is a pejorative, right? Once a word becomes a pejorative, it's always going to get overused, right? That's just true of pretty much anything. Unless, you know what I mean? Like it's going to go out of the bounds of its category, right? Because people are going to use it as a means of hurting somebody, or as a means of, like, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess just of hurting somebody, hurting their reputation, hurting their feelings, etc. Right? Like once it becomes a pejorative, that's just how it is. because people are going to find it effective, and people are going to open that window larger as a means of, attacking people that are tangential to it, right? So,
or just shoehorning people in that they don't like in general after a while.
Right. So it's like if chaser was purely descriptive, right, and wasn't used as a pejorative, then it likely wouldn't have this problem. The issue that I have with the term chaser is its very, very wide usage. And what it seems to me is that I think it's because it's layered with politics, right? And it's like when someone is sure, you could say chubby chaser as a term is layered with politics if you're a body positive person, right? But like there's not a lot of that, right? It's not as common. There's not like a lot of like, overweight people's discords. It's a very different thing, right? And so what I find is that like often chaser isn't just describing someone that they believe is creepy or that they believe is hyper-focused fetishizing, right? But and doing it in such a way that is harmful to people, right? That's like such a way that they won't go away, right? I think it literally very often gets immediately associated with anybody that doesn't have the political opinion that trans women are women. And that right, and the moment you don't have that opinion, you're a chaser if you also happen to like trans women. And so it becomes even less useful as a word and just becomes this dumb insult that gets thrown around to anybody that doesn't have the right opinion, and also, could be even the teeniest bit creepy. And creepy is such a subjective thing anyways.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I can I can see that, but like I guess fetishization of like any group, right, could be completely harmful, but I can see people like overusing the word like in this space we have the Nazi discourse, right, where we like overuse Nazi so no one really knows what an actual fucking Nazi is, right, or they use like a racist or anything, so it gets like diluted in these words that we use to shame people, just become like average internet words that no one is fazed by anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, like, fetishization isn't a problem in and of itself, right? Like, if I have a foot fetish, which I don't, but if I did, it'd be cool. Right? Like, there's nothing problematic about it. And so it's very interesting to me that like body parts can be fetishized. Certain behaviors can be fetishized, right? Like if, whatever that may be. But the moment it's either a chosen or an imposed identity on somebody, all of a sudden it becomes problematized, right? So foot fetish isn't a problem, but Asian girl fetish is a problem. And it's like, I don't understand that. Like, I try to understand it, but it just seems like, I don't know. To me, if I'm being honest, it just seems like lefties freaking out about shit. Because it's like, what's the substantive difference? I have a preference, and I think it's more. Preference.
Yeah. I think it's more of like people trying to make it into like a race issue or something. Like try to like, it's a way of like labeling a person as a racist, and like you're not a harmful racist, but I still think it's racist, right? Like it's like that's what I see it as.
Racism would be like usually implies something different, which is usually implies that you are discriminating against something on the basis of race, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a preference for like a certain subset of racial features that cause you to be drawn toward black men or Asian women, etc., something like that, that wouldn't normally be racist.
Yeah. I would just respond with, I'm so glad that you finally realized that affirmative action is racist.
It's a good response. If you were to say, oh, black men are disgusting, I would never want to date them, then you're getting into territory of racist, right? That's a little bit different, because then you're explicitly like negatively excluding that group, and you're saying that they're disgusting. You could say, no, I just really haven't found the attraction in black men, which would be fine. That wouldn't be racist. It'd just be like, the features that physical features that I observe haven't really just worked for me, right? That's a fine thing to say, right? But if you
Yeah.
were to just,
But if you were
it's-
like,
so-
if I was like to be like, I don't like black women because I like going swimming, right? Like that's real racist.
that would be racist.
Oh God,
You know what I mean? Like I'd be like that
That
might
would
be
be
problematic.
racist.
You know what I mean?
what did you start? Oh my.
Right? I love black
Scott-
women, by the way.
I need a moment, okay? you gotta prepare me for this shit. Good.
Oh
Just
boy,
giving an example of what might be racist. You know what I mean?
that would be
The
racist.
justification would be racist.
Yeah.
Like,
But I don't
okay,
think the
so like,
preference in and of itself is racist, right? That's what I'm trying to point out. Is that like I actually prefer black women. I find them more attractive than white women, even though I have 2 white kids. But like if my
Or someone
preference
being
for it-
attracted to a redhead, not much different than being attracted to
Right,
a
it's
subset
like-
of features that are typically found among a certain people of ethnicity or race.
I would.
Right, but if you have a certain justification for it, that can be racist, right? Like if I was attracted to black women because I was really into race play and really wanted to fucking thought that white men were superior and were supposed to like have black slaves, like that'd be super fucking racist, right?
yeah.
Wait,
came
what's that last part?
Now,
I got distracted by a raid. What happened?
now, I'm gonna request to see internet history because like
Yeah, so like racial preference, like the facial features that are typically subset of features common to a particular race and such, or hair colors, etc., skin color, even those things are not, I wouldn't call those racist. Like people have developed physical like aesthetic attractions, right?
Is it ableist to prefer
like here's-
people that are generally like have symmetric faces? Is that ableist to be against people that you don't find like that are ugly, that are just objectively ugly?
Babies are instinctively drawn toward people with more facially symmetric faces. That's something that's very well studied. But like here's an example. So if you grow up in a predominant, if you are of one ethnicity and skin color and such, and you grow up in a community that's different from yours, what you're going to be exposed to as you grow up are going to be people with facial features and skin color and hair type and such, hair texture, that are not similar to yours, that you're going to be attracted to more than likely, because that's what your exposure is going to be. Would that be racist for them to have that attraction? No, of course not. That's what they were raised in as they were developing and starting to develop a sexual attraction.
So you're saying it's like a proximity thing, right?
Could be a proximity thing. For some people, it's like certain types of exposure, media that they listen to, shows that they watch when they're growing up, etc., music that they listen to. It introduces them to certain types of attraction that may have a pattern to them based on ethnicity or race. So that's how sexual attraction works. In addition to that, keep another thing in mind. Another thing that is very attractive to a lot of people is uniqueness, right? People are attracted to people who have a different accent from them, who seem exotic to them, who seem like something they haven't seen before. So there's that element as well. People are attracted to the exotic from their perspective.
Yeah, in some way, that could be like racist, right? Because I've heard people say, "I like black people because I find them exotic," right? That's kind of weird, right? To label it like that, or
If
you don't think
haven't
so?
grown up with black people around you, it might genuinely be exotic to them.
I mean, but isn't that the goal of genetics, right? From going at it from the most not science, but the most biological basis, right? Like the most effective thing humans can do is to increase genetic diversity, right? So being attracted to someone that's in a different race and the different culture and things like that likely means more experimentation in the genetic code. It's almost a positive from that perspective.
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see it that way. Thanks.
Now, right? But I am a little racist in my attraction towards black women. You know why?
Oh fuck.
Because not even talking about the body. Like honestly, it's usually, at least from where I'm from, it's usually a cultural thing, which is that I'm very loud and I appreciate honesty more than anything else. And I tend to find that culturally speaking that like black American women tend to be more upfront, more honest, more telling you how things are. And it is like refreshing and so attractive to me when someone's mad at me, they just tell me why they're mad at me instead of like a game of like trying to figure out what's going on, right? Like I find when I'm dating white women, like it's like I'm trying to like crack the code as to why I'm in trouble. And when I'm dating black women, I find that like they tell me why I'm in trouble, and like I can I'm like, yes, this is a problem, we can deal with it, we can fix this fucking problem, thank you. Like it's so refreshing and so much better. Are we mad now? Like I'm always honest on these streams, boys.
Huh? No, I'm not mad. I think that's very honest.
Someone said Scott being attracted to the black women isn't gonna mix the gene pool. Look, motherfucker.
Ooh. Man.
I care about the car ride, not the destination in whole. Oh my god, what an empty statement. Measure.
Oh fuck.
But I mean, yeah, did you have anything like specifically that you wanted to add? And you seem taken aback by my boisterous and crass nature.
Huh? Oh, me? No,
Part of what I love about you, Scott.
No, I think this was very educational. I just wanted to know what people say, because I have had these allegations thrown against me, all right, and I beat the charges.
You beat the charges?
Oh yeah.
And when you say you beat the charges, you mean you like to beat trans women that disagree and call you those names?
No.
Domestic violence and intimate partner violence in the trans community is a serious issue, Black Yamato, and I don't appreciate you making light of it here.
I am not. I'm not making light of that. That issue, no.
He said beat the charges, not the Chargers.
Oh, okay. Why you gotta make it weird? Dude, I'm just having fun.
My Spaniard in my chat says I look at Scott's dating preferences just like ice cream flavors. Chocolate is his fave.
Oh, fuck. When you put it that way,
You got the approval of Spaniard.
I mean, to be fair, like I'm kind of more of a swirl guy myself.
I'm a big fan of Neapolitan.
Neapolitan? What the fuck is that even supposed to mean? I just accuse you of beating
So he likes
people, and your response. Hold on.
So
Your response to intimate partner violence is you don't just like the black and white mixed. You also want a little red in there, right? I think maybe you should be more careful.
He wants a little Irish in there. Is what he wants.
Yeah, Neapolitan has like pink in it. It's all like
little
red,
white, little black, little blood.
Yeah.
Like, I see how it is. That's fucking Jesus,
pink,
man.
the pink he likes is Irish. That's what it is. He's down with the Irish.
Thank you.
Oh man.
One of my best friends Irish.
Oh, okay. One of my best friends is black too, so I can't be racist.
Yeah.
I think. Wait, are you talking about me?
I mean, you have awakened Black Air Force energy lately, so I do consider you black.
Well, to be fair, it's midnight. I've had a wonderful time talking with you, Zonia. Thanks for coming on, Black Yamato, whatnot. I'm gonna wrap up with the boys here.
All right.
Yeah,
good,
thank you.
Good hanging out with you guys.
Yeah,
Good chat.
and join the Discord. Come and hang out in the Discord if you want to get yelled at by hardcore autistic libertarians.
Oh god.
And let me watch.
Let me watch. especially when Wellspring, our resident objectivist and fellow black man, comes at you. That might be rough.
All right, you guys take care.
Thank you for letting me join.
Always a
of course.
pleasure.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.